Chapter 872. That kind of person isn't worth it. Muyu said indifferently. Muyu realized that there was a saying that was right. It wasn't that retribution wasn't coming. It was just that it wasn't time yet. But the time is coming. Muyu raised his head and looked at Chunin City. The stone tablet of the Sanshon Palace was so eye-catching. What would happen when Chunin City became a pile of ruins? Muyu couldn't help but think. Would he also look at all of this with anticipation? Looking at those ungrateful cultivators being slaughtered by Yumon. Looking at all the cultivators and mortals trembling in front of Yumon. At that time, the little boy and his mother would understand that the Sanshon Palace in their eyes wouldn't come to save them. No one would come to save them. The disciple of the true God who could have saved them wouldn't save them either. Big brother, are you also here to despise the statue of the true God? The little girl asked with her hands on her waist. When the little boy wanted to profane the statue of the true God, the little girl kept trying to stop him. Muyu turned his head and looked at the little girl. The little girl looked to be 7 or 8 years old. She had 2 spikes that pointed towards the sky and blinked her big watery eyes. She pouted her mouth and seemed a little angry. The little girl's mother at least taught the little girl the right things. What I despise is not the statue, but the human heart, Muyu said lightly and was about to leave. You even forgot the grace of the true God. Sooner or later, you will suffer retribution. My mother said that the true God is the greatest person in the world. No matter what he does, we should respect him and not bite the hand that feeds us. The little girl squatted beside the statue of the true God and began to work hard to clean the weeds around the statue. She even carried a small wooden bucket over. The bucket was half filled with water and a clean cloth. Muyu stopped in his tracks. He took a deep breath, and his heart seemed to throb again. When the whole world was covered in mud, a pure lotus would always be born to warm the world. Muyu turned around and walked to the little girl's side and squatted down. What's your name? Muyu reached out and wiped the dust off the statue. I'm called Chunshi. Chensi? What a good name, Muyu said softly. Dawn, the first glimmer of light after the darkness, gave people hope. Just like the Dawn Valley established by the Luan Feng Demon King, it brought hope to the primitive demons who were oppressed by the Dragon Clan. The little Dawn in front of him gave Muyu some hope. Little Dawn tried his best to wipe away the dirt on the statue. He mumbled to himself, My mother said, if there was no true God 100 years ago, our great-grandfather would have been murdered by Yumon, and I wouldn't have been born. Therefore, no matter what, we have to be grateful to the true God. Now that Yumon has appeared, it couldn't have been purposely released by the true God. Muyu wants to say something, but hesitates. When will those self-cultivators understand Chensi's mother's words? So you often come here to clean the dust on the true God's statue? Muyu asked softly. Little Dawn nodded. I come here twice a day. I can't stop those immortal masters from taking down the true God statue. They purposely put the true God statue here for people to despise, but I don't think that's right, so I want to help the true God keep the statue clean. Little Dawn looked up at Muyu seriously. Big brother, if you're willing to help me clean the statue, you must also believe in the true God, right? Muyu smiled. Big brother is the person who believes in the true God the most in the world. Then will Big brother protect the true God statue? Little Dawn asked. Muyu hesitated for a moment, then suddenly reached out and touched the statue lightly. A wave of spiritual energy swept out like flowing water, and the statue slowly turned into dust and disappeared with the wind. Big brother, why did you destroy the statue? The little girl stood up and asked angrily. When a statue is destroyed, it will no longer be insulted by others. Respect should be placed in the heart. Muyu pointed to the position of her heart. The little girl blinked. You're right, but I'm still sad. Muyu reached out and patted the little girl's shoulder. Go home. Don't be sad. It's not you who should be sad. It's them. A formation pattern quietly disappeared into the little girl's body. I can't save the entire city, but I can save the people I think are worth saving, Muyu said in his heart. When the whole world was covered in mud, Muyu couldn't do anything, but at least he could protect this lotus. On a tree at the gate of Chun and city, Muyu leaned on the trunk. Muyu didn't enter the city. He didn't know where the silhouette being's stronghold was, so it would be troublesome to find it by himself. But he knew that the two people from the gate of hell would definitely come out again, so he just needed to wait at the city gate. 2 hours later, sure enough, Gue San and Gue Yang walked out of the city gate. Their faces didn't seem to be very good. The two didn't say anything, but after leaving Chun'an City, they went to the deserted village. Muyu still followed them, silently, and followed them into the dark house that was about to collapse. Humph! How could there be such a thing? As soon as he entered the door, Gue Yang snorted angrily. Gue San also looked very angry. I didn't expect Shadow Killer Winter Solstice to accept the mission in advance. Although the person who contacted us didn't say anything, does he think that we don't know that their assassination target is the Gate of Hell? The silhouette being is too arrogant. They really think that the Gate of Hell is so easy to bully. I don't understand why the higher-ups don't turn against the silhouette being. Their Shadow Killer Winter Solstice has repeatedly ruined our plans. Gue Yang said gloomily. The higher-ups naturally have their own plans. You don't need to question anything. The silhouette being is everywhere in the 3 continents. It's not worth it to turn against them. We have to rely on ourselves for this matter. Gue San calmed down. What are you going to do? Gue Yang asked. Gue Shan stretched out his long fingernails and drew a circle on the table. The friction between the fingernails and the table made a sour and unpleasant sound. And then he said, "Please enter the urn and catch the turtle in the urn." Gue Yang nodded knowingly, his eyes flashing with endless murderous light. Muyu left the abandoned village and found a tall tree near the village, so that he could always monitor the movements of the people from the Gate of Hell. This tree was surrounded by a powerful formation, and the sound was also blocked. Even if a cultivator of the Unity stage passed by, they wouldn't be able to detect his existence. He knew every move of the people from the Gate of Hell like the back of his hand. The people from the Gate of Hell knew that Shadow Killer Winter Solstice was coming, so they had already set up all kinds of powerful and strange ghost formations in the entire abandoned village. These ghost formations were very powerful. Gue San and Gue Yang obviously came prepared. Even an ordinary cultivator of the 9th heavenly layer of the Unity stage wouldn't be able to survive in these ghost formations. What are we going to do now? Xiao Shuai looked at the ghosts flashing in the abandoned village from time to time, and looked at the busy figures of the people from the Gate of Hell, and asked, "The silhouette being doesn't seem to be a good organization. Is this a dog-eat-dog fight?" For a force like the silhouette being, Muyu wouldn't have a good impression of them, just because they helped to deal with the people from the Gate of Hell. In the eyes of the silhouette being, there was only money. For them, as long as they could afford it, they would kill anyone. However, he didn't expect that someone would pay a sky-high price to invite Shadow Killer Winter Solstice to destroy the plan of the people from the Gate of Hell. But who was the rich man behind this? How did he know which city the Yu Meng Devil Clan would attack? Let's watch the show. Muyu sat on the treetop, studying the teleportation array of the 5 elements and the teleportation array of the human race. He wanted to improve these 2 teleportation arrays. His fingers kept drawing mysterious patterns, and 2 very small teleportation arrays, the Yu Meng teleportation array and the human race teleportation array, were engraved in the air by him. The Yu Meng teleportation array is very different from the teleportation array of the human race. Not to mention them, even the teleportation array of the monster race has its own unique features. Why are you studying this? Xiao Shuai asked curiously. Muyu didn't answer. He just guided the patterns of the 2 teleportation arrays and tried to merge them together. Xiao Shuai blinked his eyes, looked at the distant Chun'an City, and said angrily, "You want to save the cultivators of Chun'an City, right? Those ungrateful people aren't worth saving." "I only want to save little Chun Shi," Muyu replied curtly. Xiao Shuai jumped onto Muyu's shoulder and pulled Muyu's ear. "Then why don't you just bring little Chun Shi out? There's more than one little Chun Shi in that city." "Oh, you want to save those who are grateful, don't you?" Muyu didn't answer and continued to study the teleportation array. Xiao Shuai yawned in boredom. "I thought you were going to be a bad guy." "To those cultivators, I'm already a bad guy," Muyu said indifferently. "They could disdain the true god that trapped Yamon. If Muyu saved these people, in the future, the Sancheong Palace would casually make up an excuse, and these people would follow the will of the Sancheong Palace and point their finger at another person. Muyu couldn't do anything about those ungrateful people. For 2 consecutive days, the people of the Gate of Hell didn't make any other movements. They had already set up traps, and all kinds of ghost techniques were spread throughout the small village, waiting for the arrival of Shadow Killer Winter Solstice, and then they would catch Winter Solstice off guard. Muyu was also pondering over his own teleportation array. Back then, his master didn't allow him to learn the array formations of the human race. It made sense because Muyu had already discovered the similarities and differences between the array formations of the Yumeng Devil race and the human race. He had only learned a single 5 elements teleportation array from Luo Shang, but just by relying on this 5 elements teleportation array, he was able to figure out the key points between array formations. If he followed the way the 5 elements teleportation array was arranged, he would be able to infer the other powerful 5 elements escape techniques. However, the human race's array techniques were clearly superior. Similar to the array techniques of Muyu's master and Deadwood Daddy, Yaman couldn't compete with them. He knew how he was going to modify this teleportation array. The teleportation array of the Danding sect to the second heaven had given him a lot of inspiration. At that time, when they were going to the second layer of heaven, if they encountered any danger, they just had to crush the jade pendant to teleport them back. It didn't matter where they were. Muyu also planned to create a similar array. Normally, there were 2 teleportation arrays, and they were fixed. However, Muyu couldn't go to every city to set up a teleportation array. That would take too much work, and he didn't want to save everyone. His plan was to only set up a large teleportation array to provide support. This way, when danger came, those who had the array seal could activate the array seal at any time and leave the dangerous place to appear in the teleportation array that was meant to provide support. Little Shuai, come and try the teleportation array. I'm modified. Muyu gently nudged Little Shuai, who was sleeping on a tree branch. At this time, the branches intertwined to form a comfortable nest, and there was a large leaf used as a blanket. Muyu made all of this according to Little Shuai's request. Little Shuai turned over in a daze. I'm hungry. Muyu smiled helplessly. Then I'll directly use you as an experiment. A complicated array pattern appeared in his hand, and the array pattern formed a heavenly sword-shaped array seal. It was about the size of a finger, and then he engraved it on Little Shuai's body. There was a very small teleportation array on his left, and as long as he activated the heavenly sword-shaped array seal, he could pull Little Shuai from anywhere to the teleportation array on his left. Muyu activated his spiritual power, and the array seal on Little Shuai's body immediately began to emit a light. A whirlpool appeared in the space where he was, and Little Shuai was instantly sucked in. When Little Shuai reappeared, he was already in the teleportation array on Muyu's left. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. After Little Shuai appeared in the teleportation array, he touched his butt and shouted loudly. Fortunately, there is a soundproof array here, or else the people from the Gate of Hell would definitely be attracted. What? Does it hurt? Muyu asked in surprise. If this kind of teleportation array could hurt even the thick-skinned Little Shuai, then it definitely couldn't be used by a cultivator using it. Little Shuai said angrily, Muyu, why did you sneak attack me when I was sleeping? Muyu grabbed Little Shuai and put him in his arms. He patted Little Shuai and asked, I was just testing the teleportation array. Hurry up and tell me where the problem is so I can improve it. Little Shuai bit Muyu's finger. Why didn't you wake me up for your experiment? I did. Being bitten by an angry Little Shuai was no joke. Muyu's finger was immediately left with 2 small holes. Fortunately, Muyu's skin wasn't thin, and the holes quickly healed. Little Shuai snorted. Your teleportation array didn't even protect my body. It's a far cry from the Danding sect's teleportation array. Muyu nodded thoughtfully. Generally, teleportation arrays had 2 fixed arrays that connected each other and teleported people from one end to the other. The fixed arrays had protective abilities, so they wouldn't tear people apart during the teleportation. Yu Meng's teleportation array couldn't teleport cultivators. Back in Dongsha City, he had modified Yu Meng's teleportation array to be able to teleport cultivators because he was right next to them. He could directly protect the people in the teleportation array. But when using an array seal that could teleport people anywhere, there wasn't a fixed array for protection. Plus, he couldn't be by everyone's side to protect them, so there was a lack of protection during the teleportation. But it's not bad that you're researching this array. I feel that this teleportation array has many other uses, not just for saving people. Chapter 873. Let's hear it. At first, Muyu only intended to use this array to save people. Think about it. If we can't beat the enemy, we can use the formation to teleport away. That way, we can break into the Threefold Palace's lair without any scruples. First, we'll get 10,000 explosive pills to blow up their doghouse. Then, when they're flustered and exasperated, we'll use the formation to escape. Xiao Shuai's eyes lit up. Muyu laughed involuntarily. If it were that easy, Deadwood Daddy would have used it when he went to snatch the Soul Return. The teleportation formation was a kind of spell, and there was a way to break it. Before the teleportation formation was activated, it could be destroyed to stop the teleportation. Even the teleportation formation that Muyu wanted to study now would have a formation pattern vortex appear when it was used. As long as one's cultivation was strong enough, it was more than enough to break the formation pattern vortex. However, Xiao Shuai's words gave Muyu some inspiration. Xiao Shuai's idea was to use the formation pattern to escape, which was also the original intention of Muyu's research. But if he thought about it the other way around, what if he used the formation pattern to attack? For example, if he wanted to lead a group of people into a heavily guarded sect and force his way in wouldn't work, then he could use a teleportation array. Muyu could sneak into the sect alone and set up a teleportation formation somewhere in the sect. This way, his people who had the formation pattern outside could directly activate it and silently appear in the teleportation formation set up in the sect. Wouldn't that be perfect? Muyu and the others would have to make a trip to the Threefold Palace in the future. It wasn't easy to break into the Threefold Palace, and no one knew where they were. If he controlled someone in the Threefold Palace to bring in the teleportation formation prepared in advance, then Muyu could activate the formation pattern outside and quietly enter the Threefold Palace. I think Xiao Shuai's idea is good. Then I have to deal with this teleportation formation. After this, we'll go to the Danding sect. Muyu said, okay, then we'll go to the Danding sect and get 10,000 explosive pills. No, 1,000,000. No, how about 10 million? The more the better. Xiao Shuai waved his little fist smugly. He's not going to explode the pill. Muyu shook his head helplessly. He wanted to study the Pill Cauldron School's teleportation array. However, the premise of all his plans was to first create this teleportation array. The Pill Cauldron sect's teleportation array had been around for a long time. It was left behind from ancient times. The way it was set up was different from the current array techniques. There was a special protective mechanism inside. The fact that the jade pendant of the teleportation array was able to withstand the terrifying pressure of the spatial barrier was enough to show how powerful this array technique was. In fact, when Muyu set up the seal, he also left a protective force in the seal. However, this formation was different from ordinary two-way teleportation formations. It was a formation that could teleport people away at any time and place. It wasn't a fixed teleportation formation. Therefore, the protective force would always be worn away. It just so happens that I also need to go to the Danding sect to do something, Muyu said. For example, they could bury Helion Kong's soul tool in the Pill Cauldron sect cemetery. Or they could kill Shi Dengtian. However, before that, Muyu still planned to stay and see how Shadow Killer Dong Ji killed the people from the Gate of Hell. Muyu didn't have to wait for long. On the fourth night, the abandoned village started to become somewhat bleak. The moon in the sky was very bright, but when the moon shone on the entire village, it appeared somewhat gloomy and pale. He raised his head and looked at the night sky. Suddenly, he thought of something. Back then, in the desert of Clearwater City, when Shadow Killer Qing Ming came to assassinate him, it was also a night like this. They're finally here. Muyu looked at the bright moon in the sky. Unknowingly, a graceful snow eagle had appeared beside the bright moon. This snow eagle was white, and its entire body carried an austere aura. It was like a cold light in the night sky, biting, cold, and eye-catching. Snow eagle, Pulsatilla, Shadow Killer really has a lot of tricks up his sleeve, Muyu said. When Shadow Killer Qingming tried to assassinate Muyu, there was a Pulsatilla by Qingming's side. Its name was Return to Heaven. Shadow Killer had an extremely powerful shadow concealment technique. He could appear and disappear unpredictably in the shadows. As long as there were shadows, he could become a foothold for them to appear, making it impossible for people to guard against him. The snow eagle flapped its wings and slowly flew towards the abandoned village. Its arrival seemed to cause the temperature of the entire village to gradually drop. Winter had quietly arrived. It was the winter solstice. The snow eagle circled around the abandoned village, not making any sound. Under the moonlight, the snow eagle's shadows crisscrossed above the village. That shadow was very fast, streaking past the broken bricks and tiles of the village, streaking past every dark corner of the village. However, what Mia didn't expect was that the snow eagle in the sky suddenly split into two, transforming into a second snow eagle. And this snow eagle's target was actually Mu Yu's location. Whoosh! The concealment array set up by Mu Yu was directly torn apart, turning into countless fragments that scattered. His gaze turned cold, and the array patterns under his feet flashed. The Big Dipper constellation array had already teleported him out and landed in the air. The moonlight enveloped Mu Yu's body, forming a long and narrow shadow on the ground. However, this shadow didn't connect with Mu Yu. Mu Yu coldly looked at the shadow he projected on the ground. The shadow seemed to have lost control and shot out from the ground. A pitch-black shadow flew towards Mu Yu. Then, it stood in mid-air, facing Mu Yu. This was a shadow without a face. It was also Shadow Killer Winter Solstice. What a keen sense of smell. Mu Yu used his array to hide extremely well, but he was still discovered by Shadow Killer Winter Solstice. Shadow Killer Winter Solstice appeared from Mu Yu's shadow, locking a faintly discernible killing intent onto Mu Yu. I don't like being spied on when I'm on a mission. Shadow Killer Winter Solstice's voice was very cold, like cold iron without any emotion. I just want to see how the people in the Gate of Hell die. Shadow Killer Winter Solstice gave Mu Yu a very dangerous feeling. The killing intent on his body was restrained and steady, not leaking out. However, it couldn't hide from Mu Yu, who had the power of killing. He was certain that if he fought with Shadow Killer Winter Solstice, it wouldn't be easy. However, Mu Yu wasn't afraid. A dangerous opponent would only make him stronger. You'll see. Shadow Killer Winter Solstice didn't move. However, the snow eagle above the abandoned village flew faster and faster. In the end, only afterimages were left in the entire village. It was fast and terrifying. If one paid close attention, they would see that these afterimages didn't overlap on the abandoned village, but the places where each afterimage passed by were covered with a thick layer of frost. Winter was coming. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless soft sounds came from the village. Then, everything returned to silence, as if nothing had happened. In order to deal with Shadow Killer Winter Solstice's arrival, the people in the Gate of Hell had set up countless ghost spells in the small village. They wanted to catch Shadow Killer Winter Solstice like a turtle in a jar. However, the snow eagle that Shadow Killer Winter Solstice brought left afterimages all over the village without triggering any ghost spells. Shadow hiding is as good as the rumors say, Mu Yu said simply. His perception of life force was very strong. There had been countless people from the Gate of Hell hiding in the village, but now the village was filled with the smell of blood. There was no trace of life. Shadow Killer Winter Solstice had killed all the people from the Gate of Hell in the time it took to talk to Mu Yu. What else do you want to see? Shadow Killer Winter Solstice continued to ask. Mu Yu shook his head. The people from the Gate of Hell are dead. I'm relieved. I'm just worried that you'll leave a fish out of the net like last time. I did leave a fish out of the net. Shadow Killer Winter's solstice's cold killing intent fell on Muyu. Muyu said indifferently, "You want to kill me?" The biting cold killing intent disappeared in a flash. "No one is paying me to kill you. I don't do business at a loss." Muyu's shadow gradually fell to the ground and returned to its original appearance. Shadow Killer Winter's solstice was in Muyu's shadow. The snow eagle flew over from the distance and crossed Muyu's shadow. Then, the killing intent disappeared from Muyu's shadow and merged into the snow eagle's shadow. The two snow eagles gradually merged into one and flew towards the bright moon in the sky. They flew further and further into the night until they finally became a dot. Killing people took only a moment. The night was Shadow Killer's battlefield. Winter's solstice is much stronger than Qingming, little Shuai couldn't help but say. Muyu nodded. The killing intent accumulated in Shadow Killer Winter's solstice was very strong. It was far from what Qingming could compare with. Shadow Killer Winter's solstice brought a lot of pressure to Muyu. If Muyu used his full strength, he would be much stronger than ordinary tribulation stage cultivators. However, when facing Shadow Killer Winter's solstice, Muyu still felt threatened. Shadow Killer really couldn't be underestimated. Muyu looked at the moon in the sky and thought about something. "Muyu, what are you thinking about?" Little Shuai asked. "Didn't you notice it just now? The entire village of the Gate of Hell people has been killed by Shadow Killer Winter's solstice, but none of their soul power escaped," Muyu said. Another reason why he waited here was that he wanted to take away the soul power of the people in the Gate of Hell, but Shadow Killer Winter's solstice didn't leave any soul power behind. Isn't the silhouette being a pawn of the Sanchong Palace? He must have taken away the soul power just now, Little Shuai guessed. Muyu shook his head and said, "I don't think so. Shadow Killer Winter's solstice doesn't have the aura of the Sanchong Palace. At least, I didn't feel it." "Then we should have captured Shadow Killer Winter's solstice and asked him about it," Little Shuai said straightforwardly. "Someone paid Shadow Killer Winter's solstice to assassinate the people in the Gate of Hell. If I attacked Shadow Killer Winter's solstice, wouldn't that ruin that person's plan?" Muyu said. Muyu guessed that it was most likely Xiang Nan who paid Shadow Killer Winter's solstice to assassinate the people in the Gate of Hell, because it was very easy for Xiang Nan to get money. He could control 100,000 people in Clearwater City, so he could also control those rich people. Besides, I'm not confident that I can kill Shadow Killer Winter's solstice. He is even stronger than Gu Chaofeng. Muyu didn't hide anything. Shadow Killer Winter's solstice was stronger than Gu Chaofeng, but he didn't appear on the Supreme Immortal Ranking Board. There was only one explanation. Shadow Killer Winter's solstice was over 40 years old. What kind of existence was the silhouette being that they had such a powerful tribulation stage assassin? Chapter 874. Muyu stepped out, and in the blink of an eye, he had landed in the abandoned village. The broken bricks and tiles were still covered with a thick layer of frost, which had not melted. There were 39 people from the Gate of Hell in the whole village. They had set up an inescapable net, and each one of them was hiding in the dark, ready to ambush Shadow Killer Winter Solstice. But these people still underestimated the strength of Shadow Killer Winter Solstice. They didn't even have time to make a move before they could no longer move. To deal with Shadow Killer, who had the shadow hiding technique, hiding in the shadows was tantamount to seeking death. Muyu knew where these people from the Gate of Hell were hiding. He already knew this village like the back of his hand. A formation pattern appeared in his hand, like a lantern, shining in the darkness ahead, illuminating the person from the Gate of Hell behind the broken wall in front of him. This person from the Gate of Hell tightly covered his throat with his hands, but his chest and heart had long been bleeding. The light illuminated his shadow. His shadow was very strange. A pitch-black shadow rope was tightly wrapped around the neck of this person from the Devil's Gate. There were 2 holes in the shadow's chest where his heart was, as if it had been pierced by the light. That was also the fatal wound of this person from the Devil's Gate. The shadow-killing technique was so strange. Injuring the shadow was equivalent to injuring the body. The most surprising thing was that when the body was injured the shadow was also damaged. The light shone on the second person from the gate of hell. This person was hiding behind a broken door. His hands were still in a state of forming seals, but his eyes were wide open in horror. In the center of his shadow's forehead, there was a light hole, just like the bloody hole on his body's forehead. The third person from the gate of hell was Gue-san, whom Muyu saw. Gue-san's face was full of shock. His eyes were full of disbelief. His right hand had strangely pierced through his body, coming out from his back, and his heart was in his own right hand. Rather than saying that Gue-san did all this himself, it was better to say that his shadow controlled him to do these things. A big hole appeared in the chest of Gue-san's shadow, and the shadow held a heart in its hand. Then Muyu saw Gue-yang in the shadows. Gue-yang had already summoned his twin. The twin also left a shadow on the ground. But whether it was Gue-yang or his twin, their throats were cut by a sword. Their necks were almost cut off. This was the case for both the main body and the shadow. Out of so many people, only Gue-yang was able to summon his twins in time. The other twins didn't even have the chance to come out before they died. What a fast method of killing. Muyu felt more and more shocked as he watched. These people from the gate of hell, hiding in the shadows, each one of them died miserably. But after they died, they didn't seem to fall down. Instead, they maintained the same posture as when they were alive. When Muyu's light shone on the shadows of these people from the gate of hell, their shadows were very strange. Some of the shadows were covered with countless holes, as if their hearts were pierced by thousands of arrows. Some of the shadows had 2 light holes in their eyes, as if their eyes were dug out. Some of the shadows even had a dagger inserted into the top of their head, leaving only the hilt, but there was no trace of the dagger on their body. Muyu was no stranger to Shadow Kill's shadow hiding technique. When he fought with Shadow Kill Qingming, it could be said that he had exhausted all of his strength. He deeply understood the power of this technique. In the end, it was Muyu who killed Qingming, so he didn't see what would happen after the shadow hiding technique killed people. This was the first time he saw how the shadow killed people. Using the shadow to kill people was Shadow Kill's unique ability. This extremely powerful assassination method made countless self-cultivators tremble in fear. Thus, Shadow Kill's fierce reputation made countless self-cultivators tremble in fear. Once you were targeted by Shadow Kill, then one night, you would definitely die on your own shadow. Little Shuai kept looking at these people from the gate of hell who were still in the same posture as before they died. He asked curiously, "These Japanese people never fall down?" He found it strange because one of the people from the gate of hell was tilted back 45 degrees, but he still didn't fall down. He was nailed to the ground by a shadow spear. The shadow spear pierced through his throat, keeping his body in the same posture as if he was about to fall down, but couldn't. And this person from the gate of hell didn't have a spear in his body at all. There was only a big bloody hole in his throat. Muyu glanced at the moon and nodded thoughtfully. "I think these people will only fall when their shadows become a da." The array pattern in Muyu's hand had already flown above the head of the person for the gate of hell who had been pierced by the shadow spear. The light from the array pattern shone on his shadow, turning it into a ball of shadow. Bang! The body of the person from the gate of hell who had been pierced by the shadow spear fell to the ground with a loud bang. Little Shuai looked at the fallen person in surprise. Then he saw the people from the gate of hell in the small house and asked, "Then what should we do with these Japanese people hiding in a house where the sunlight can't reach? They can only stand in the shadows and rot." Muyu put away the array pattern and left the abandoned village. In the shadows of the trees in the distance, a pitch-black shadow was imperceptibly watching Muyu's every move as if waiting for something. Shadow Kill Winter Solstice hadn't left yet. The aura of slaughter is very strong. Shadow Kill Winter Solstice looked at Muyu's back and said as if he was talking to himself. Every shadow killer was stained with the blood of countless people. They were messengers who walked in the night, living in the shadows and harvesting the lives of the people designated by their employer. They had accumulated a lifetime of killing intent, which was cold and bone-piercing. However, Shadow Kill Winter Solstice could feel the terrifying killing intent on Muyu's body. That kind of aura was even stronger than his. But the mission in Chun and City hasn't been completed yet. Shadow Kill Winter Solstice let out a fleeting voice and then disappeared into the shadows of the trees. The wind blew and the shadows disappeared. Some returned to silence, and only the leaves rustled. As soon as the sky brightened, the sleeping Pill City began to become active. Cultivators began to move about in this huge city one after another. Cultivators who entered and left the city had to pass through the city's defense or raise strict checks. Muyu also came to Pill City. Pill City was a big city under the jurisdiction of the Pill Cauldron sect. It was also a place where countless cultivators gathered. Its scale wasn't smaller than Eastern Sand City. There was also a 100-herb hall in Pill City. The shop took up a large area and was the largest shop in the city. In Pill City's 100-herb hall, there were only pills that couldn't be bought at a price. Compared to other cities that needed to be transferred from other places to buy precious pills, there was no need to worry at all here. This was because Pill City was very close to the Pill Cauldron sect. However, unlike other cities, Pill City still had a statue of Jianing Chunfeng on the city gate. It seemed that Jianing Chunfeng's statue hadn't been replaced yet. This made Muyu feel quite surprised. When all the cultivators were attacking Jianing Chunfeng, Pill City still dared to keep the statue of a true god. It was really surprising. Muyu, you are so nice. You specially came to Pill City to buy candied haws for me. Xiao Shuai was so happy that his eyes were sparkling. He held more than a dozen skewers of candied fruits in his hands as he followed behind Muyu. It was unknown how his little hands could hold so many skewers of candied fruits. Don't lose me. Muyu walked on the streets. The streets were bustling with people. Cultivators came and went. It was very lively. Little Handsome had already turned into his human form again. He wanted to eat, so he definitely wouldn't be obedient. If he kept his little beast form, he would be easily recognized. Therefore, Muyu let him turn into a little kid and follow behind Muyu. Muyu naturally didn't come to Pill City to buy candied haws for Little Handsome. He wanted to find a way to enter the Pill Cauldron sect. Now that the cultivation world had started to attack him again, although he was the branch master of the Pill Cauldron sect's Green Bamboo Peak, this branch master was only in name. Moreover, the Pill Cauldron sect probably couldn't wait to cut ties with him. Therefore, swaggering into the Pill Cauldron sect would cause unnecessary trouble. Muyu wasn't afraid of anything. He just didn't want to make things difficult for the Pill Cauldron sect's Taoist Yindan. This was Deadwood Daddy's roots. Even if Muyu didn't like this place, he didn't want to cause trouble. However, Shi Dengtian still had to be killed. There was no doubt about that. Are we going to the 100-herb hall? Little Handsome's mouth was stuffed as he blinked and asked, I need to see if there's anyone I know. Muyu passed by an inn called the Four Seas or Home, and suddenly felt a little emotional. A few years ago, he had brought Deadwood Daddy to Pill City for the first time. They had stayed in this inn. This was the property of the Pill Cauldron sect. At that time, he had also become enemies with Shi Dengtian's grandson, Shi Mingwei. However, he had also met Kai Lai here. In the blink of an eye, so many years had passed. Deadwood Daddy was now in trouble, but the Four Seas or Home inn was still so simple. Cultivators came and went in an endless stream. Business was booming. Things were still the same, but people had changed. Muyu thought for a moment, then turned and entered the inn. He didn't expect to meet Kai Lai here this time. However, he had some thoughts about Deadwood Daddy in his heart, so he wanted to come and take a look. The waiter in the inn immediately came over and asked Muyu if he wanted to have a meal or stay in the inn. Muyu didn't want to stay in the inn, so he found a quiet corner and sat down. Little Handsome casually asked the waiter and then ordered a table of dishes. There were many customers in the inn. Everyone was talking noisily about what had happened in the cultivation world and where there was any big news. Inns and restaurants were the best places to gather information. In this news, the Xian Immortal battle in 2 months was no longer considered news. The Sanchong Palace's call for everyone to fight against Yuman was almost outdated. Muyu was also used to hearing about the collective crusade against Jianing Chunfeng and his 5 disciples. In this matter, Xiao Shui, who could control water, was also rumored to be Jian Ying Chun Feng's disciple. Muyu wasn't interested in any dark horse or genius who had been hiding in seclusion for so many years and was now rushing up the extreme immortal rankings and becoming the most promising extreme immortal. What everyone was talking about the most was the Yu Ming Devil Clan's attack on the major cities. So far, the Yu Ming Devil Clan had already attacked 5 cities, and the Eastern Sand City was only the 4th. After that, another city was attacked. However, everyone was more at ease with Pill City. This was a large city, and it was near the Pill Cauldron sect. Once it was attacked, the Pill Cauldron sect would immediately receive the news and gather people from the 8 sects to come and help. Chapter 875. In the past, the cultivation world had constantly criticized the drawbacks of array masters. Array masters were the most explosive cultivators, but they were also the most despised existence. This was because their battles were usually one-off. After using their strongest array skills, they would start to run out of energy. If they couldn't kill the enemy, they would be killed by the enemy. Therefore, no one thought highly of array masters. However, the main function of an array master was to arrange all kinds of array formations. Array formations were fixed, and most of them were mainly for defense. They were quite effective against the Yumming Devils. Therefore, at this critical juncture where the Yumming Devils were wreaking havoc, everyone remembered the various benefits of an array master. Now, Yaman had already slaughtered a few cities, but the defensive arrays didn't seem to be as effective as the legend said. Everyone suspected that the defensive arrays had been in disrepair for a long time, which allowed Yaman to succeed so many times. This also meant that the defensive arrays needed experienced people to check and repair them. The only person who could take on this responsibility was the sect leader of the array faction, Zhuge Xiaosheng. Now, the sect leader of the array faction, Zhuge Xiaosheng, had become an existence that everyone respected. His status and prestige had already surpassed the existence of the 8 gates. Almost every city wanted to invite him to check the strength of the defensive arrays and to set up teleportation arrays. If Yaman's attack was too sudden, he could teleport the cultivators out of the city silently. The array masters that had declined in the past were now like alchemists. They were respected everywhere they went. Have you heard? The sect leader of the array faction, Zhuge Xiaosheng, is coming to Pill City tomorrow. What? Sect leader Zhuge is coming? Yes. The sect leader of the Pill Cauldron sect, Taoist Yundan, personally invited him. He's going to invite him to the Pill Cauldron sect as a guest. Yes, that's right. I heard about this too. Our Pill City hasn't set up a teleportation array yet. Zhuge Xiaosheng is here to set up a teleportation array. There are also various arrays that can be used to transmit information to each other. This way, when Yaman attacks, we can quickly send the news to other cities so that they can quickly come to our aid. Then can we remove the statue of Jianing and Chun Feng? Seeing Jianing and Chun Feng's statue makes me angry. It's all because of him that Yaman is wreaking havoc. I heard that Zhuge Xiaosheng didn't agree to remove the statue of Jian Ying Chun Feng, because that statue is the foundation of some kind of city-protecting formation. It is irreplaceable. Every city that Zhuge Xiaosheng personally inspected, Jianing Chun Feng's statue was kept. Those cities that removed the Sword Shadow and Chun Feng's statues will be in trouble. It's equivalent to them destroying the city-protecting array. Can't the stone tablet in the threefold palace be used as the array base? That stone tablet was erected by them, not by the third layer palace, so it doesn't seem to be possible. Right now, the people in those cities are anxious. In the past, I don't know who set up the city-protecting array. He actually used the statue of Jian Ying and Chun Feng as the base of the array. Now that I think about it, it really was a mistake. But then again, being a formation master is really a popular profession now. I used to look down on array masters. I really regret it. If I had gone to learn about formations at that time, I would definitely be able to make a lot of money now. Come on, you have to pass 3 of the 8 gates of the formation sect first. You're still thinking about making money at a time like this. When Yaman bites you to death, it doesn't matter how much money you have. The diners at the side were chatting and joking with each other. However, from their tone, their attitude towards array masters had changed drastically. Many people were even considering letting their sons learn about formations in the future. Old man Zhuge is coming here. We're really lucky. Xiao Shuai held the plate and ate until his mouth was full of oil. Even his nose was stained with meat. Muyi nodded. He also didn't expect Zhuge Shaoxing to come here. Otherwise, he might have directly used the Divine Soul Array to control a Danding sect disciple to sneak in. In any case, he had already used a similar method when he went to the Mortal Dust sect. However, Zhuge Shaoxing has already started to set up a teleportation array. That way, the cultivator's life will be saved. Xiao Shuai picked up the big bowl of soup and drank it directly. He never ate with a spoon or chopsticks. The teleportation distance of an ordinary teleportation formation is very short, and most of the teleportation formations are very complicated. So, the number of people that can be teleported at one time can't be too large. If the Yumeng demons launch a surprise attack, it will take at least a few days and nights to teleport everyone away. Muyu had been studying the teleportation arrays of the human race these days, so he was very clear about these things. The teleportation arrays left behind in the cultivation world had a lot of drawbacks. They weren't as powerful as the ancient teleportation array of the Danding sect. Then are we going to wait for Zhuge Shaoxing? Xiao Shuai asked while holding a drumstick. Yes, it's easier to follow him into the Danding sect. Muyu didn't know why, but when he said these words, he felt a little ridiculous. He was obviously a branch master of the Danding school, but he still had to go back secretly. He was afraid that this was the most sullen branch master in the history of the Danding school. Muyu stayed at the Four Seas as home in. Since Zhuge Shaoxing would come to this city tomorrow to check the city's defensive array and set up the teleportation array, then he would definitely meet Zhuge Shaoxing. At that time, he would just have to follow Zhuge Shaoxing. In the afternoon, Xiao Shuai said that he wanted to go shopping, so Muyu went with him. At this time, he also discovered a strange phenomenon. This was because there were many small stalls on the street selling all kinds of evil-warding treasures. There was a water-cold demon beast leather coat that could prevent fire, a meteorite that could force Jin Yumeng to retreat from the depths of the Black Demon Mountain, a 4th-rank demon beast saliva that could melt Earth Yumeng, a 5th-rank demon beast undead dog blood that could stain water Yumeng, and garlic that grew in the snow of the heavenly mountain could smoke wood Yumeng away. In order to deal with Yumeng, there were all kinds of strange things. Of course, the most popular ones were the various Xian array treasures produced by the Array faction, which are the most valued nowadays. The so-called Xian array treasures were engraved on a certain array base. They could activate the array at any time and display the array. It was similar to the green jade used by the $1 Million Trading Company to track extreme immortals. A peddling voice on the street attracted most of the cultivators. Passing by, don't miss it. The Array faction's latest fire-warding array, which can resist Xian stage Fire Yuming's self-defense. A young man with freckles on his face was waving a blue jade pendant in his hand. This jade pendant was flowing with colorful lights, and it indeed contained a strong fluctuation of spiritual power. Yumon's strength was divided into Heaven Stage, Earth Stage, Xian Stage, and Yellow Stage from high to low. The corresponding strength was roughly equivalent to Qi Refining and Foundation Establishment Stage. Xian Stage was equivalent to Gold Core and Nascent Soul Stage. Earth Stage was equivalent to Out-of-Body Stage and Spirit Severing Stage, and Heaven Stage was equivalent to Combination Stage. Within each stage of Yumon, there are also differences in strength. For example, Earth Stage Yumon was divided into High Earth Stage and Low Earth Stage. High Earth Stage Yumon strength was equivalent to Spirit Severing Stage, while Low Earth Stage Yumon strength was equivalent to Out-of-Body Stage. Now that Yumon had begun to rise, cultivators began to gradually realize that understanding Yumon's strength was the most important, so everyone was familiar with the division of Yumon's strength. This freckled young man advertised that the blue jade pendant in his hand could deal with Xian Stage Fire Yumon, which meant that it could deal with nascent soul stage Yumon. At this time, his stall was surrounded by a large group of cultivators, who were pointing at the Xian array treasures that the freckled young man was selling. "Is this really made by the array faction?" an uncle asked in a low, muffled voice. The freckled young man patted his chest and said, "I guarantee that all the Xian array treasures I sell are from the array faction, and I'm honest with you. There's also the latest anti-counterfeit symbol of the array faction here. Look carefully." The freckled young man pointed out the array faction symbol at the bottom of the jade pendant to everyone. The symbol of the array faction was a black and white A trigram, and this symbol would be engraved on all the small items made by the array faction. "How much is this fire-warding array?" Now that everyone was paying attention to the array faction, if the freckled young man was really selling items from the array faction, it could be said to be a hot item. "I have fire-warding arrays of different strengths here. Now that Yumon is acting recklessly, I'm selling these Xian array treasures to protect everyone's safety, so the price is very affordable, and the price is only 998. You didn't hear wrong. As long as you pay 998, you can bring home the fire-warding array from the array faction. Your safety is guaranteed when facing fire Yumon." The freckled young man began to advertise the items he was selling. Then, other than the fire-warding array, are there any other treasures? Yumon isn't as simple as fire Yumon. A bald old man asked. This old mister asked a good question. Other than the fire-warding array, I also have a metal control array to deal with Jin Yumon. But against a mystic Jin Yumon, when Jin Yumon controls the sharp metal blades to attack, I can activate my metal manipulation formation. The formation will cover your body, and any blade that comes at you will be repelled. Everyone look carefully. The freckled young man picked up another white metal array base that was the size of a fist from his stall. Then, he activated the spiritual energy in his hand, and a white array pattern suddenly flowed out from the metal array base, enveloping him. A 15 or 16-year-old girl beside him shouted, "Everyone make way, swords have no eyes, and you can't hurt the innocent." The crowd quickly retreated, making space for the freckled young man and girl. The girl's cultivation seemed to be only at the foundation establishment stage. She picked up a blade in her hand and slashed at the freckled young man. The freckled young man looked at the girl with confidence and didn't dodge. When the blade was 2 feet away from the freckled young man's head, the freckled young man's body emitted a white light, and then the blade was pulled to the side by a strange force. Look, this is the power of the metal control array. Any blade controlled by Yumon won't be able to hit it. The girl threw a few axes, hammers, sickles, and hammers at the young man, but they were all repelled by the metal control array on the freckled young man's body. The crowd immediately let out a cry of surprise. This metal control array was simply a divine item to deal with Jin Yumon. This metal control formation can deal with Jin Yumon, who is also a nascent soul stage Jin Yumon. Let's invite this nascent soul stage senior to give it a try. The freckled young man pointed at the nascent soul stage bald old man in the crowd and said. The bald old man immediately stood up and said, "All right, then this old man will respectfully accept. Watch out for my sword." A brown flying sword flew out from his hand, and the aura of a nascent soul stage was unreservedly displayed. The flying sword pierced through the air and pierced towards the freckled young man. The white light on the freckled young man's body lit up again, repelling the bald old man's flying sword. "Heavens, is this real?" the bald old man said with great surprise. The crowd immediately became excited. This metal control array was not only used to deal with Jin Yumon, but also to deal with cultivators themselves. "I want to buy it." "Me too. Such a good thing. And it's even produced by the array faction. It's a loss if you don't buy it." "This old man wants one too." The bald old man was the first to take out his spirit stones and buy the metal control array. The other cultivators also began to rush over, fearing that it would be snatched away if they were a step too late. Mu Yu and little Shuai joined in the fun at the side. Seeing the freckled young man handing over the items and the girl next to him collecting money, they felt a burst of laughter in their hearts. "That's something that doesn't belong to our array faction, right?" Little Shuai asked while licking a stick of candied hawthorn. Back then, he had happily sat on the throne in the array hall, enjoying the worship of all the Khanate array masters of the array faction. Therefore, he had always thought of himself as the young master of the array faction. The symbol of the array faction is indeed an 8 trigrams array. However, the 8 trigrams array of the array faction can move, especially the Tai Chi Yin Yang fish in the middle of the 8 trigrams. They can rotate and flow with each other. Their 8 trigrams array won't move. It's a fake, Muyu said. But the array technique they drew seems to be pretty good, Little Shuai said. The fire warding array is indeed a pretty good array technique. Unfortunately, that level of fire warding array is probably not enough to deal with Hui Yumon, who is equivalent to a nascent soul stage cultivator. At most, it can only deal with the Jindan period. As for the metal control array, it's probably just a piece of iron magnet. They used array techniques to change the iron magnet into a repulsive iron magnet. At most, it can only deal with the Jindan period. After all, Muyu is the leader of the array talisman sect. He could see the power of the array created by the freckled young man at a glance. But it seems like so many people have been deceived, Little Shuai said. Muyu shook his head. Using our array faction's name to make money. These 3 people are actually capable of doing it. 3 people? Aren't there only 2? Little Shuai asked, puzzled. That bald old man is also the freckled young man's accomplice. Otherwise, with his strength, that sword of his would have already pierced through the freckled young man's heart. That array wouldn't have been able to block it at all, Muyu explained. Then should we protect the reputation of our array faction and not let these 3 people swindle others? After Little Shuai finished eating a stick of candied haws, he took out a few buns and skewered them into candied haws. This way, he wouldn't have to carry so many buns. Now that Yumon had caused everyone to be in a state of panic, all the cultivators were in danger. The status of the array faction had risen, and all kinds of powerful array techniques that could deal with Yumon were valued. Therefore, the array faction had become the hope of the cultivation world. At this time, if someone were to use the name of the array faction to buy Xian array treasures, it would definitely cause a mad scramble. Muyu pondered for a moment and thought of something. He said, of course we have to go and take a look. That's great. They definitely wouldn't have thought that they would encounter the leader of the array talisman sect when they swindle others, right? Chapter 876. Many cultivators on the street were doing all kinds of business, and the Xian array treasures at the freckled youth stall had already been sold out. The cultivators who bought them were complacent, while the cultivators who didn't buy them were somewhat dejected. They were very upset that they didn't come earlier. Aren't we going to expose them? Little Shuai asked. Why should we expose them? Muyu said, then what do you mean by look? Aren't we going to cause trouble? Little Shuai didn't understand. He thought they were going to cause trouble. He liked to cause trouble the most. There's no need to cause trouble. I just feel that those 3 people aren't simple. Muyu said thoughtfully, could it be that people from our array faction came out to ruin their reputation? Little Shuai finished the last bun on the bamboo stick. Muyu stood in place and didn't move. He kept watching the 3 people. Soon, the crowd dispersed from the stall. The freckled youth also packed up his things with the little girl and turned into a small alley with a face full of joy. At this time, the bald old man was already waiting for them in the alley. Come, come, come. We've made a lot of money today. The bald old man smiled and called out, Master, we sold 79 items today and earned hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. The freckled youth chuckled. The little girl behind him seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied. I say, Master, if we cheat like this, what if those people find out that we're selling fake goods? It doesn't matter. Even if they find out that they've been cheated, they won't be able to find us. The bald old man rubbed his hands and asked his disciple to quickly take out the money. The freckled youth piled up a large pile of spirit stones in the alley. The bald old man also casually set up a formation. The alley seemed to be covered by a ripple of water. Then, the 3 figures in the alley disappeared. This bald old man did have some skills. He set up an illusion array in this remote alley and covered the tracks of the 3 people. Little Ching, don't think too much. With so many spirit stones, we don't have to worry for a long time. The freckled youth said with a smile. The bald old man sat down on the ground with a greedy look on his face. His eyes seemed to be unable to move away from the spirit stones. The girl called Xiao Qing pouted, her face full of reluctance. Although she had also put in a lot of effort in her performance, she clearly did not approve of what her master and senior brother had done. She was only forced to do so. Now that everyone is afraid of Yaman, we're just taking advantage of the situation to make some money. What's more, the Shin formation treasures I created are indeed effective. The bald old man didn't feel guilty at all, but the publicity is too much. How could he deal with Yaman, who was in the profound stage? At most, they can only deal with the Jindan period, right? Xiao Qing said. Yaman during the Jindan period was also a mystic stage Yumeng. What we advertised was to deal with the mystic stage. The mystic stage Yumeng is equivalent to the nascent soul stage and the Jindan period. I didn't specify which one, so they believed it when they saw my nascent soul stage cultivation. You can't blame me, the bald old man said with a mischievous smile. The bald old man tested the metal control array with the strength of the nascent soul stage. He also secretly let the surrounding cultivators think that the metal control array really blocked the attack of the nascent soul stage. Only then did they pay attention to it and began to rush to buy the goods. However, at this moment, the surrounding scene suddenly seemed to have melted. The sky was covered with dark clouds, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. A bolt of lightning as thick as a bucket struck down from the sky. The walls on both sides were directly shattered, and the waves instantly poured in from all directions. The waves were turbulent, and the sound of the waves shook the sky. Ah, what's going on? The bald old man suddenly let out a strange cry. Why is there suddenly so much water? Ah, could it be that Yaman has invaded? The freckled youth and his master hugged each other tightly. Little Qing was also shocked and hurriedly leaned into her master's embrace. Just a moment ago, the three of them were clearly standing in a remote and deserted alley, preparing to divide the goods. They didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, they would be surrounded by the tide. It was as if they were trapped on an isolated island. The waves parted, and Muyu walked over from the top of the waves. He stopped in front of the master and disciples who were hugging each other. You, who are you? The bald old man sat on the ground and hugged his two disciples as he asked nervously. Muyu looked at these three fellows and felt a burst of laughter in his heart. He said, I am from the Array faction. Why have I never seen the three of you before? Ah, master, look, I already told you not to use other people's names to sell goods. Sooner or later, other people will come knocking on our door. Little Qing, who was in the bald old man's embrace, pulled her master's beard and said nervously. The bald old man was also a little dumbfounded. Ah, young man, you are from the Array faction? That's right. Where did the three of you come from? Hurry up and tell me the truth. Little Shuai sat on a wave and asked arrogantly. Sir, we didn't do it on purpose. We were just trying to make a living. Now that the world is unstable, we were also forced to use the name of the Array faction. Sir, I have elders and children to take care of. Please be magnanimous and let us go. We promise that we won't do it again. The bald old man sat on the ground and hugged his two disciples. He had a bitter expression as he complained. He tried his best to squeeze out his tears, but he didn't succeed. Master, there are no elders above you. There are only the two of us, the freckled youth reminded softly. Then why aren't you saying it for me? The bald old man knocked the freckled youth's head. The freckled youth hurriedly shouted, Sir, I have this old man to send me off. I have my junior sister to take care of. Life is very difficult. Please be magnanimous and let us go. We promise that we won't do it again. What send you off? I want to live a long life, you brat. The bald old man knocked the freckled youth's head again. Hey, what are your names? Little Shuai asked bluntly. Sir, my name is Chu Xiaoqing. He is my senior brother, Chu Xiachi. This is my master, Taoist Chu Byuku. We really didn't mean to ruin the reputation of your Array faction, Chu Xiaoqing hurriedly said. Taoist Chu Byuku? There are people with this name? Where are you trapped? Little Shuai asked in surprise. It's not that we can't get out. It's that we are unyielding. No, it's that we are unyielding. Taoist Chu Byuku hurriedly corrected him. Muyu looked at the strange master and disciples and felt helpless. He asked, "Your array techniques aren't bad. Where did you learn them?" The fire and metal controlling arrays were all drawn with cheap array bases. They weren't as good as they were advertised. However, the array techniques were indeed very good. It was just that those cheap array bases couldn't provide enough spirit energy to fully display their power. It's an array technique passed down from my ancestors. My master secretly learned it. He learned it from an array book that my master stole. Chu Byuku immediately became angry. He knocked the heads of his two disciples and shouted, "What are you talking about? Are you looking for a beating?" Chu Xiaoqing and Chu Xiaoqi both held their heads. Muyu sized up the master and disciples. Doubt flashed through his heart. He always felt that these three people weren't simple. However, looking at them now, it seemed that he was overthinking. "All right, I won't pursue the matter. Be careful if you sell fake goods in the future. The Array Faction's sect master will be here tomorrow. If he catches you, it won't be so simple." Muyu waved his hand. The surrounding turbulent waves receded, and the sky became clear again. The walls of the alley were still intact. The illusion array had been removed. "Let's go. We're leaving just like that." Little Shuai was a little disappointed. "I thought too much. They're just ordinary cultivators." Muyu turned and was about to leave. Taoist Chu Byuku quickly smiled apologetically and said, "Thank you, my lord. Thank you, little brother. Xiaoqing, quickly give these two Xian array treasures to this young man as a thank you gift." Chu Byuku stuffed the two Xian array treasures that hadn't been sold out to Chu Xiaoqing. "Master, how could he be interested in them? Isn't it embarrassing?" Chu Xiaoqing muttered softly. "What's embarrassing? Master's array techniques are extraordinary. Otherwise, why would so many people rush to buy them? This is called being polite, do you understand?" Taoist Chu Byuku reprimanded. "They rushed to buy them, but they were still fooled by you." Chu Xiaoqing pouted and stood up from the ground. She trotted to Muyu and handed the two Xian array treasures to Muyu. She said a little uneasily, "Young master, my master said that this is a thank you gift. Thank you for not pursuing this matter." Although Chu Xiaoqing was only 15 or 16 years old, she was slender and elegant. She looked quite cute, especially her big eyes, which seemed to be filled with mist. Muyu smiled and shook his head. "I don't need these two things." "Wow." Chu Xiaoqing looked at Muyu and suddenly cried out inexplicably. "What's wrong?" Muyu asked curiously. Nothing. I mean, young master, you must accept them. Otherwise, my master will scold me again." Chu Xiaoqing's face was a little flustered, and there was a trace of crimson. She quickly covered it up. Muyu hesitated for a moment and took the two Xian array treasures that were inscribed with cheap, ordinary array foundations. Then, he nodded and left with little Shuai. Chu Xiaoqing kept staring at Muyu's back until Muyu disappeared from her sight. Then, she retracted her gaze. She turned around and saw her master and senior brother staring at the spirit stones as if they were money grubbers. Their faces were very happy. The mist in Chu Xiaoqing's big eyes gradually turned into a blue light and disappeared. She sat back down beside Taoist Chu Byuku, pulled her master's beard, and said, "Master, so this is what a true God's disciple looks like. What else do you think he looks like? I gave you a chance to see his true face. What are you yelling for?" Taoist Chu Byuku said without raising his head. "I am." Chu Xiaoqing snorted. "What's the difference?" "Forget it. It's more important to count our spirit stones. Who cares what a true God's disciple looks like? It's just like that." Taoist Chu Byuku said indifferently. "Master, but a true God's disciple looks so handsome when he smiles. Why do you need to use an illusion array to hide such a handsome face? What a waste." Chu Xiaoqing blinked her big eyes and acted like a love-struck fool. "Junior sister, look, I'm also very handsome when I smile. You're far from it." Chapter 877. Muyu returned to the Four Seas' home inn. The inn had 4 floors and countless self-cultivators were welcomed. There were also many rooms. The place was a mix of good and bad people. Every self-cultivator who stayed in a room might have a big background. Muyu's room was on the third floor, room number 2. It was very convenient to enter and leave. After Xiao Shui came back, he ordered another table of dishes. He ate until his mouth was full. Only then did he burp and return to his room. Soon night fell. The bustling Dan city gradually quieted down. The moon hung on the treetops. It was very quiet. Muyu lay on the bed. He did not feel sleepy at all. Xiao Shui slept beside him, drooling. He even put his little feet on Muyu's stomach. His body was slanted to one side. Muyu did not care about Xiao Shui's sleeping position. He was still thinking about Chun and City. To be exact, he was thinking about Yumon. The people from the Gate of Hell were familiar with Yumon's movements. There was actually someone who was even more familiar with the movements of Yumon and the people from the Gate of Hell. He was even willing to pay a large sum of money to hire Shadow Killer Dong Ji to destroy the plans of the people from the Gate of Hell. Could this person really be Xiongnan? But if it was Xiongnan, he could just show up and kill the people from the Gate of Hell. Why would he spend so much money? Muyu could not understand this. Then he thought about Chu Buku and his 2 disciples that he met during the day. When he first saw Taoist Chu Buku, he always felt that this bald old man had a strange aura. For a moment, he even felt that this old man looked like a mountain that people could only look up at. Even he couldn't help but feel small in front of him. But when he took a closer look, this old man was still only at the nascent soul stage. He was just an ordinary self-cultivator. There was nothing strange about him. That's strange. Was I really wrong? Muyu was quite puzzled. At that time, he felt that the old man was not simple, so he followed him. However, other than being a little strange, there was nothing abnormal about the master and disciples. Muyu took out the 2 Xian array treasures that Taoist Chu Buku asked Chu Shaoqing to give him during the day. These 2 were the fire-warding array and metal-controlling array that Chu Buku and his disciple were selling. The base of the array was carved by the lowest grade rank 3 demon spirit. It would probably exhaust all of its spiritual power after using it once. It's hard to believe that this old man's self-taught array techniques could reach such a level. Muyu examined the fire-warding array and metal-controlling array over and over again. Although the fire-warding array and metal-controlling array were very simple culmination array techniques, but even a culmination disciple of the array faction would not be able to carve them out with such precision. He channeled his spiritual power into the 2 arrays. Suddenly, he let out a light. Then, a strange spiritual power came from the array and rushed towards Muyu's palm. Muyu frowned and immediately threw out the 2 Xian array treasures. He quickly sat up and looked at the 2 Xian array treasures in the air in bewilderment. Crash! The 2 Xian array treasures drew a blue light in the air. The low-grade array base inexplicably shattered into a pile of dust. This pile of dust did not dissipate. Instead, it seemed to be pulled by something in the air. Then it turned into a few big words in the air. Be careful of Zhuge Shaosheng. He's a stumbling block. Zhuge Shaosheng is a stumbling block. Muyu was stunned. What did this mean? He was still wondering if the pile of dust would turn into other words. However, no other words appeared. The dust gradually dissipated. This time, it really disappeared. What's going on? Muyu was shocked. He didn't expect that these 2 array bases would have such a change. Moreover, there was even more information hidden within them that made people scratch their heads. His intuition during the day was right. This Taoist Chu Buku was not a simple bald old man. But what is the meaning of these strange words? He told me to be careful of Zhuge Shaosheng. Muyu had a lot of doubts in his mind. What nonsense was that old man talking about? How could Sect Master Zhuge be a stumbling block? Taoist Chu Buku casually left a message for Muyu to be careful of Zhuge Shaosheng. Could it be that Zhuge Shaosheng had some unspeakable secret? Muyu thought of the sect master of the erased sect. He was a very good person. Although Muyu had not seen Zhuge Shaosheng for a long time, he did not believe that Zhuge Shaosheng would harm him. Muyu really wanted to find Taoist Chu Buku during the day and ask him what was going on. However, several hours had passed. The 3 of them had probably left long ago. Who are you? What secrets do you know? Muyu fell into deep thought. His strength was now at the tribulation stage, but the three of them were able to hide from his perception. This Taoist Chu Byuku's methods were very clever. In the second room, on the second floor of the Four Seas Inn. Master, I want to go up and take a look at him. He's really handsome. Chu Xiaoqing grabbed the beard of Taoist Chu Byuku, who was sitting on a chair and drinking tea. Her eyes were filled with infatuation. What are you looking at? Just look at me. Hurry up and sleep. We still have to travel tomorrow. Taoist Chu Byuku raised his head and looked at the ceiling, revealing a mysterious smile. But didn't you say that we came here to steal array books, to learn array techniques, and sell fake items because of Zhuge Xiaosheng? Chu Xiaoqing pouted. That's right. We originally came to find Zhuge Xiaosheng, but who would have thought that Muyu would also come? That has nothing to do with us. I've already reminded him. Furthermore, Zhuge Xiaosheng is his subordinate. It's better for him to handle it himself. Taoist Chu Byuku shook his head and said, Then I'll go up and personally remind him again. Can you explain it to him clearly? Chu Xiaoqing tugged at Taoist Chu Byuku's beard and said coquettishly, Don't pull, I don't have many strands of beard left. Taoist Chu Byuku shouted. His voice was very loud. Normally, the entire inn could hear him, but strangely, he did not wake anyone up. Master, if you don't let me go, then tell me about his deeds. Jian Ying, Chun Feng's disciple, is really a mystery. Chu Xiaoqing gently shook Taoist Chu Byuku's hand, looking like an obedient girl. Taoist Chu Byuku snorted. Don't you already know? But the rumors outside are all fake. Then what else do you want to know? Did he really massacre Dongsha City? Yes, what's wrong? What's the reason? Chu Xiaoqing asked curiously. In the eastern Sand City, there's a girl who pulled her master's beard every day and didn't give him any spirit stones to spend. She was so rude to him that Muyu couldn't stand it anymore and massacred the entire city. Taoist Chu Byuku harumphed. Chu Xiaoqing snorted. Forget it if you don't want to say it. Then, she rolled her eyes and asked, Master, should we follow him tomorrow? Zhuge Xiaosheng will also come to Dan City tomorrow. Let's stay for another day and see how he deals with Zhuge Xiaosheng. Okay? We still have very important things to do tomorrow, so we can't afford a delay. I don't want to waste my breath explaining too much to him. Taoist Chu Byuku was not interested in following Muyu. Chu Xiaoqing nodded with shining eyes. That's right, junior sister. We have more important things to do than this. Master, we have money, so we can go there again. Yes, we have money. I'm so happy. I've been holding in for a while. Taoist Chu Byuku also laughed loudly, as if he was excited just thinking about going there. He looked as if he was dozens of years younger, like an old child. Chu Xiaoqing snorted and said, The spirit stones are with me, so don't even think about going there. Taoist Chu Byuku and Chu Xiaoqi immediately became anxious. Xiaoqing, don't be like this, let's talk things out. The worst decision they had made was to hand over the spirit stones to Chu Xiaoqing for safekeeping. No, you two are definitely going to gamble again. Master, you're already so old, so why are you still going there? You're always losing. When will you win? Chu Xiaoqing said angrily. Last time, I bet that one of the top 20 would be killed, didn't I win? Taoist Chu Byuku defended himself. But the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard didn't change, so who said you won? That's because they were short-sighted. Master can't go, but senior brother can go, right? Last time, I bet that the number of ladies on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard would be odd or even, and I won. Chu Xiaoqi hurriedly said with a smile. You still dare to say that? You secretly interfered with the battle of the 45th rank, and you still have the nerve to say that? Chu Xiaoqing glared at her senior brother, and Chu Xiaoqi smiled sheepishly. The Supreme Immortal Leaderboard didn't say that I couldn't do that. Anyway, you're not allowed to go. You're spending money like crazy, and without me, you would have starved to death. Here's some pocket money for you. Chu Xiaoqing threw out a few spirit stones, and they bounced in the air a few times before landing in the hands of Taoist Chu Byuku and Chu Xiaoqi. Only 9 spirit stones? Taoist Chu Byuku's eyes widened. Why do I only have 3 spirit stones? Chu Xiaoqi wanted to cry. Cut the crap. You have to be frugal. No matter how frugal you are, you don't have to get only one room, right? There's only one bed here. Who's going to sleep? Chu Xiaoqi said. The two of them turned around and saw that Taoist Chu Buku was already lying on the bed with his eyes closed, and he was snoring softly. Young people should cultivate diligently. You can't always think about sleeping. The time at night is used for cultivation, not sleeping, Taoist Chu Buku said calmly. Then what about you? Chu Xiaoqing and Chu Xiaoqi asked in unison. Old people will get rheumatism if they don't sleep, Taoist Chu Buku said matter-of-factly. Then I'm going out. Chu Xiaoqing ran toward the door, but no matter what she did, the door was tightly sealed. It's useless. Hurry up and cultivate. We still have to hurry tomorrow, and I have to earn back my money. Taoist Chu Buku yawned and looked at the ceiling. A strange smile appeared on his face. Muyu's room was right above them. The next day, the news of the sect leader of the Array faction coming to Dan City quickly spread throughout Dan City. Now, Zhuge Xiaoxing's status was comparable to the sect leaders of the 8 sects. He had become the hope of all the cities to fight against the Yu Ming Devil Clan. After all, his array techniques could save the self-cultivators from the abyss of suffering before the Yu Ming Devil Clan invaded. Chapter 878. Zhuge Xiaoxing's white hair fluttered in the wind, but he was full of spirit and had the demeanor of a transcendent being. His aura was restrained and steady, and his every movement exuded a unique aura that caused others to respect him. In fact, even before Yumon's attack, Zhuge Xiaoxing's reputation in the cultivation world was great. Although cultivators looked down on array masters, people with cultivation like Zhuge Xiaoxing were considered invincible in the combination stage, so no one dared to look down on him. As a Xiantian array master, he didn't have to worry about not having a Xiantian array base to use. Therefore, no combination stage cultivator dared to say that they could defeat Zhuge Xiaoxing. The person following behind Zhuge Xiaoxing was Master Lu. Master Lu also had the appearance of an otherworldly expert. His white hair was hale and hardy, making people revere him. When Muyu saw Master Lu, he also missed him. Master Lu was the person in the Array faction that Muyu interacted with the most. There was another person beside Zhuge Xiaoxing that Muyu also knew. It was the only Xiantian disciple of the Array faction, Mu Qinghong. At this time, Mu Qinghong's cultivation had already reached the combination stage. He looked more mature and steady, and there was a faint smile on his face. This young man from the Talisman sect who regarded the Array faction as his home left a deep impression on Muyu. Back then, the Array faction was in trouble and was almost destroyed by the Talisman sect. In the end, Mu Qinghong changed sides at the last minute and chose to betray the Talisman sect to protect the Array faction. Now, Mu Qinghong no longer had that melancholy aura between his eyebrows. Instead, it was replaced by confidence and open-mindedness. What surprised Muyu was that Master Lu was beside Mu Hao. Mu Hao's face was set up with an illusion array, so ordinary people couldn't see his true face. Judging from the array on Mu Hao's face, this illusion array must have been set up by Zhuge Xiaoxing himself. Perhaps even a combination stage cultivator couldn't see through this layer of illusion. However, with Muyu's current eyesight, he was still able to see through this layer of illusion. He was very grateful to Zhuge Xiaoxing. The fact that Muyu was from the Mu clan in Clearwater City had already caused a huge commotion. Many people were definitely trying to find out who was in the Mu clan. If Mu Hao were to appear in the cultivation world with his true identity, he would definitely attract the hatred of many people. It would also bring him great danger. Zhuge Xiaoxing must have considered this point when he used the illusion array to help Mu Hao conceal his identity. So far, the self-cultivator world was not clear about the relationship between Muyu and the Array faction. Back then, Muyu had always acted as Feng Mu. Master Zhuge, how have you been? The person who came out to greet Zhuge Xiaoxing made Muyu's jaw drop. It was actually the old man guarding the pavilion. The old man guarding the pavilion was now a great god in the cultivation world. Not to mention other things. After Muyu helped him get rid of the wood dregs in his body, the old man broke through to the crossing tribulation stage and became an 8th-stage alchemist. In the cultivation world, he was a highly respected old immortal that everyone respected. At this time, the old man's face was full of smiles, looking like an expert. His appearance attracted the attention of countless self-cultivators. This was Taoist Yuanda of the Pill Cauldron sect. Who would have thought that he would personally appear in Pill City to greet Zhuge Xiaosheng? Zhuge Xiaosheng's face was really big. Behind the old man was Yao Wuji. Yao Wuji was still a 6th-stage alchemist. His face was glowing, and he looked very energetic. Senior Yuanda, Master Yao, it's an honor to meet you. Senior Yuanda and Grandmaster Medicine have actually come. I'm truly overwhelmed by your favor. Zhuge Xiaosheng did not dare to be arrogant. Taoist Yuanda's reputation was like thunder, not to mention that he was a crossing tribulation stage 8th-stage alchemist. Whether it was crossing tribulation stage or 8th-stage alchemist, he was much more noble than the sect leader of the Array faction. As for Master Yao, his reputation was also like thunder. He was respected by everyone when he went out. It was just that this was a special time. Yaman's appearance just happened to raise Zhuge Xiaosheng's status. Sect leader Zhuge is too polite. You are now the hope of our cultivation world to fight against Yaman. Furthermore, you came to Pill City. Yundan is busy and can't come, so this old man can only be the host. This old man still has to rely on you to set up the array. Taoist Yuanda laughed heartily. Yao Wuji also smiled and returned the greeting. Senior Yuanda is too polite. Let me introduce you. This is my Array faction's Master Lu Dei. These two are disciples of my Array faction. Why don't you hurry up and greet Seniors Yuanda and Master Yao? Zhuge Xiaosheng laughed. Greetings, Senior Yuanda, Master Yao. Greetings, Senior Yuanda and Senior Yao. Master Lu, Mu Chenghong and Mu Hao hurriedly bowed. If it was in the past, how could their status as Array Masters be compared to alchemists? Not to mention being able to meet Taoist Yuanda, this great god. Of course, both sides probably didn't know the relationship between the other party and Mu Yu. If Zhuge Xiaosheng and Master Lu knew that the sage-like Taoist Yuanda in front of them had been ruthlessly extorted by their cheap sect leader Mu Yu, they would definitely be shocked. The Array faction is indeed full of talents. Now that Yaman has launched a large-scale attack, we will need the help of Array Masters in the future. Sect leader Zhuge, please. Taoist Yuanda smiled and nodded. Senior Yuanda, Master Yao, please. Zhuge Xiaosheng returned the greeting. Taoist Yuanda, Zhuge Xiaosheng, Master Yao, and Master Lu. These four people could be said to be great gods of the cultivation world. It was quite rare for them to appear here at the same time. For great gods of the cultivation world suddenly appeared in Dan City, causing many cultivators to be extremely excited. To be able to see Taoist Yuanda, many cultivators felt that they were extremely lucky. Such a great figure usually didn't go out. How could they have the chance to see him? Taoist Yuanda's every action was so generous and appropriate. He was truly a highly respected old immortal. If not for the fact that Mu Yu knew this old man's usual nature and knew that this old man was definitely wearing a wrinkled, tattered shirt that hadn't been washed for hundreds of years under his bright and beautiful robes, he might have been like most people and respected this old man. At least this time, the clothes fit a little better. Mu Yu looked at the old man and felt a sense of familiarity. He remembered the last time at the 100 Herb Hall in the 50-mile garden in the south. At that time, the old man complained that he hadn't worn a grand dress for many years, and even his clothes were too small. At that time, it was Mu Yu who cursed and helped him pull up the bright clothes. In the past, he had always quarreled with the old man and would often cheat him from time to time. He even extorted a lot of precious pills from him. Thinking about these things made him reminisce. Although Deadwood Daddy's accident was indirectly related to the old man, Mu Yu didn't blame the old man. This was because the old man was sent away by the three palaces. Mu Yu understood this point very clearly. It's just that sect leader Zhuge. Mu Yu had a lot of doubts in his heart. He still didn't understand Taoist Chu Byuku's words. Taoist Chu Buku told him to be careful of Zhuge Shaosheng. What exactly was Zhuge Shaosheng to be careful of? Taoist Yuanda and Zhuge Shaosheng chatted and laughed, attracting many cultivators to watch. To many people, Pill City had Taoist Yuanda and Zhuge Shaosheng guarding it. Even if Yaman attacked with all his strength, they wouldn't be afraid. The two of them directly climbed up the Pill City's gate tower and came to the side of Jian Ying Chunfeng's statue. Jian Ying Chunfeng's statue was the foundation of the city's array. This was irreplaceable. The city defense array used the force of nature to set up the array. Unfortunately, Zhuge Shaosheng only understood part of the force of nature. He was far from reaching the level of Mu Yu, where he could use anything as an array. However, Zhuge Shaosheng was still able to inspect and repair the city defense array. Back then, Eastern Sand City's city defense array had been in disrepair for a long time and wasn't maintained. As a result, it wasn't able to evenly distribute the attacks from the outside. Therefore, every time Yaman attacked, the cultivators who were the foundation of the array would suffer a huge blow. This matter was spread by the survivors of Eastern Sand City. Zhuge Shaosheng naturally knew how to prevent something like this from happening again. Usually, the city defense array needed someone to specially activate it. However, this array could be directly activated by Zhuge Shaosheng. After all, Zhuge Shaosheng was more familiar with this kind of thing than the other city lords. Sect leader Zhuge is going to activate the city defense array. The city defense array that he personally inspected definitely won't have any problems. Our Pill City is considered safe. Yeah. Below the city gate, many nosy cultivators came to see how Zhuge Shaosheng was going to maintain the city defense array. They were all in awe of Zhuge Shaosheng. The transparent, ripple-like array pattern quickly enveloped the entire Pill City. Zhuge Shaosheng's hands kept forming seals. Countless array patterns were integrated into the city defense array. All the cultivators present felt as if there was something extra in their bodies. It was as if they had become a part of the entire array. The city defense array was set up with the force of nature. Therefore, it used all the cultivators as the foundation of the array. The stronger the cultivator, the more protection they would provide to the city defense array. When the array pattern passed through Mu Yu's body, Mu Yu pondered for a moment. In the end, he decided to lead the force of nature away so that he wouldn't become a part of the array foundation. Although he didn't believe that Zhuge Shaosheng would harm him, Taoist Chu Buku's methods were extraordinary. Mu Yu had no choice but to take his words seriously. Zhuge Shaosheng carefully inspected the circulation of the entire citadel barrier and explained in detail to Mu Qinghong and Mu how the citadel barrier worked and how to maintain it. This was the reason he brought the two of them out. Very quickly, the city defense array was operating smoothly. The parts that had not been activated for many years were also repaired by Zhuge Shaosheng. Senior Yuanda, you are a tribulation stage expert. Please go out of the city and give it a try. Zhuge Shaosheng cupped his hands and said. The way to test whether the city defense array could evenly disperse the attack was naturally to accept the attack of a tribulation stage cultivator. If this array couldn't convert the attack, then Zhuge Shaosheng would be the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Therefore, he took the risk. This was also one of the reasons why Taoist Yuanda came here today. A city defense array that could withstand the attack of a tribulation stage expert was a reliable city defense array. This was because Priest Yu Meng had the strength of a tribulation stage expert. Other cities couldn't find a tribulation stage cultivator, so Zhuge Shaosheng couldn't do anything about it. However, for Pill City, the Pill Cauldron sect naturally wanted Taoist Yuanda to take action. All right, then I'll accept your offer. Taoist Yuanda smiled. Senior Yuanda, please do your best. Please don't show any mercy. Zhuge Shaosheng said. Taoist Yuanda nodded his head and left Pill City through the city gates. He flew into the sky above Pill City and did not refuse anything. The walking stick in his hand grew in the wind, and with a monstrous aura, it smashed down with a loud bang. Buzz! The entire Pill City let out a soft cry, as if it had been smashed by a huge mountain. All of the cultivators looked at the Yuanda Taoist's full-force attack in bewilderment, their hearts filled with shock. Although the battle strength of an alchemist was publicly acknowledged to be the lowest in the cultivation world, Taoist Yuanda was a tribulation stage cultivator after all. If this walking stick was any lower, if there wasn't a city defense array, Pill City would probably be destroyed beyond recognition. However, the city defense array clearly blocked this attack and spread Taoist Yuanda's attack to every part of the city defense array, perfectly neutralizing it. Zhuge Xiaosheng was also safe and sound. Great! If the city defense array can be so safe, then our Pill City can be considered safe. That's right. Sect Master Zhuge is really an expert senior. The cultivators of Pill City were all overjoyed. With such a city defense array, they wouldn't have to worry about Yumon's attack in the future. Muyu, Zhuge Xiaosheng seems to be maintaining the city defense array, right? Little Shuai also heard Muyu talk about Taoist Chu Buku in the morning. He also felt that it was a little inconceivable. That seems to be the case for now. Muyu had been paying attention to the changes in the city defense array. Every time Zhuge Xiaosheng used a spell on the city defense array, Muyu saw it. The runes that Zhuge Xiaosheng integrated into the city defense array were all maintaining the city defense array, restoring the city defense array to its most perfect state. He didn't do anything. That old liar must be lying. He actually dares to lie to us. The next time we catch him, we'll beat him up. Little Shuai said, "That's a senior who hides his strength." Muyu watched from the crowd as Taoist Yuanda and Zhuge Xiaosheng, who had returned to the city, chatting and laughing. Zhuge Xiaosheng didn't do anything strange. He did it for the sake of the citizens of the city. Why did Taoist Chu Buku give Muyu that strange hint? At this moment, he suddenly felt something strange. He glanced at the city gate of Pill City. Then, his pupils constricted. There were 3 familiar figures at the city gate who were preparing to leave Pill City. It was Taoist Chu Buku and his 2 disciples. It's that senior. Muyu pulled Little Shuai and disappeared on the spot in an instant. They rushed towards the city gate. These 3 figures were too suspicious. Muyu had to stop them and ask them clearly. There were many people gathered at the city gate. They almost surrounded the city gate. However, Muyu turned into a ray of light and swept past everyone's heads. He jumped out of the city gate. Chapter 879. Muyu's figure flashed out of Pill City, but when he looked over, he found that Chu Buku and his 2 disciples had disappeared. Where did they go? Little Shuai asked in surprise. In just a few breaths of time, Muyu had lost track of the 3 of them. Who was that old man? Muyu closed his eyes and looked to the east. He appeared on a short hill in a flash. What's wrong? Just now, I felt that the aura here was a little chaotic, Muyu said in a low voice. The plants on the hillside had become Muyu's eyes, quickly searching the entire hillside for any movement. Almost all of her senses had explored the ground, and the roots of the trees had spread out infinitely, but there was nothing unusual on the entire hillside. Was it an illusion? Muyu squatted down and touched the soil on the ground. He reached out and grabbed something in the air, and his expression changed slightly. The power of a domain. Muyu and Little Shuai looked at each other. The power of a domain meant that the person who disappeared here was a great ascension stage expert. Muyu stood up and said, "Senior, I'm Muyu. I was rude yesterday. Can I ask Senior to show yourself?" There was only the sound of the wind blowing, and no one else appeared. The power of the domain disappeared. He left. Little Shuai reached out and grabbed the air, sweeping it twice before reminding him. Muyu was a little disappointed. He had met an expert senior and wanted to ask for some advice. Unfortunately, this senior had no intention of meeting him. After waiting for an hour and circling around the short hill, no one appeared. Let's go. Let's go back and see Zhuge Xiaosheng," Little Shuai said. Muyu nodded and could only turn around and leave. "Ouch, Master, you've been stepping on my foot for an hour. It's time to let go." Chu Xiaoqi groaned in pain. "Shut up. So handsome. I want to give birth to little monkeys for him." Chu Xiaoqi looked like a fangirl. "You're only 15. You haven't reached the legal age for marriage. Why would you give birth to little monkeys? Who said that 15 can't get married?" That's what I said. I am the law. Behind a large rock on the hill, 3 figures were huddled together. Chu Xiaoqi was pressed against the stone wall. Taoist Chu Buku stepped on his feet and kept retreating. Chu Xiaoqi was held tightly by Taoist Chu Buku, not letting the girl rush out to greet Muyu and say, "You're so handsome," to his face. "Why don't we show ourselves? It's not like he's going to do anything to me." Chu Xiaoqi scowled miserably. Not only had his foot been stepped on, he was almost squashed flat by his own master. Bastard. In any case, I'm a Taoist master. Do you think I am someone you can meet just because you want to? Taoist Chu Buku snorted. Don't you know that an expert should maintain a sense of mystery? TSK, you're just embarrassed that you were almost discovered by a tribulation transcendence cultivator, right? Chu Xiaoqi curled his lips. Then, Taoist Chu Buku stomped on his disciple's foot twice and spun it around. Chu Xiaoqi was in so much pain that tears fell. Master, I was wrong. You are a Taoist master with a noble status. Not just anyone can meet you. Master, please let go. Chu Xiaoqi still looked like a fangirl. We didn't get discovered last night when we slept in the room below his. I know. His cultivation must have increased again today, and his senses must have become stronger. Talented people are so handsome. Handsome my ass. That's because I set it up in advance last night and erased the traces of my domain. Of course, he couldn't discover it. I didn't have time just now. Speaking of which, this guy's sense of smell is really amazing. I was so fast, but he still noticed me. Whatever, let's hurry to the gambling city. Taoist Chu Buku lifted Chu Xiaoqi and Chu Xiaoqi up like little chicks and disappeared. Pill City. The Pill Cauldron sect had invited Zhuge Xiaosheng not only to check if the city guarding array was safe, but also to set up a 2-way teleportation array that could leave a way out for all the cultivators in the city. Because there had to be 2 teleportation arrays, and both were fixed, Zhuge Xiaosheng would set up one in the city and the other in the Pill Cauldron sect as suggested. However, Zhuge Xiaosheng had to first determine the location of the 2 teleportation arrays. Taoist Yuanda had already cleared a large area in the center of Pill City. According to the scale of the teleportation array, it had to be able to teleport at least 200 people at once. Similar to the teleportation array in the 50-mile garden in the south, it could only teleport 1 person at a time. If you wanted to teleport more than 200 people at once, the cost of the array would be enormous. Only a large city like Pill City could afford this. After Zhuge Xiaosheng finished surveying the terrain and had a plan in mind, he did not immediately take action. He had to go to the Pill Cauldron sect to check on the other teleportation array. Only by confirming the specific distance between the 2 could he accurately set up the teleportation array. Taoist Yuanda smiled and said, Sect Master Zhuge, let's go to the Pill Cauldron sect to check on the location of the teleportation array. It just so happens that our Pill Cauldron sect has something to ask of you. Senior Yuanda is too polite. I will definitely do my best to do my job well. Zhuge Xiaosheng smiled. Please, please. Under everyone's respectful gazes, Taoist Yuanda and Zhuge Xiaosheng had already left Pill City in a grandiose manner, heading towards the Pill Cauldron sect. Everyone sent these people out of Pill City and watched them leave. If the other end of the teleportation array is set up in the Pill Cauldron sect, then Pill City will be one of the safest cities in the cultivation world. That's right. Now, we don't have to worry about Yumon's attack anymore. The city defense array is enough to withstand the attack of a tribulation stage cultivator. Even if there's an accident, we can still use the teleportation array to escape from this city and head to the Pill Cauldron sect. It's safer there. No, I have to hurry and buy a house near the teleportation array in Pill City. Yes. I also want to change the inn I'm staying at to the teleportation array. Many cultivators had already come to their senses. This was because the teleportation array could only teleport about 200 people at a time, and Pill City had a population of several 100,000 people. It was even larger than Eastern Sand City. When there was danger, naturally, the closer they were to the teleportation array, the faster they would escape. It's too late. The property prices there have already skyrocketed a month ago. Even the rent for the inn has increased by several times. I can't be. Fortunately, I had the foresight to buy a house there last year. You're so rich to be able to buy a house in the center of Pill City. All kinds of voices, including joy and annoyance, came one after another. The distance between the Pill Cauldron sect and Pill City was not far. They needed to pass through a vast forest, bypass 3 mountains, and pass through a plain to reach the boundary of the Pill Cauldron sect. With the speed of Taoist Yuanda and the others, it would only take them 2 hours to get there. Muyu quietly followed behind. He had walked this road before, so he knew what kind of terrain there would be along the way. Just in case, he planned to show up at the 3 mountains and explain the situation to Taoist Yuanda and the others. However, Muyu still had some doubts in his heart. He was quite regretful that he couldn't stop Taoist Chu Buku. The only thing he could be sure of now was that Taoist Chu Buku was a powerful senior at the Great Vehicle stage, whose cultivation was extremely high. If only he could stay a little longer. I could ask him about the whereabouts of Immortal and I Lay. Muyu was very regretful. Since they were all masters of the Great Vehicle stage, they must have some understanding of each other. Maybe this senior also knew who Immortal and I Lay was. Or, Taoist Chu Buku is Immortal and I Lay? Little Shuai turned into a small beast and yawned in Muyu's arms. Muyu shook his head. It's not him. When I was in the dragon searching array, I saw the back of Immortal and I Lay. I will never forget that back. When they were in the dragon searching array, Immortal and I Lay guided Muyu to find the 9th person with eternal life, but he only left Muyu with his back. However, because Immortal and I Lay was too important to Muyu, he remembered Immortal and I Lay's back very clearly. Could it be that Ranhenshi? Little Shuai asked again. Ranhenshi and Immortal and I Lay may not be the only masters of the Great Vehicle stage in the human race. Have you forgotten that Deadwood Daddy was also a master of the Great Vehicle stage? There must be a few hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the human race. There must be a few hidden masters of the Great Vehicle stage. For example, Deadwood Evergreen was such a low-key existence, so Muyu couldn't determine the identity of this Taoist Chu Buku. Taoist Yuanda, Zhuge Shaosheng, and others talked and laughed all the way, leisurely and contented. Soon, they flew above the woods. Muyu also entered the woods. He was very fast in the woods. He couldn't wait to go through the woods, ready to go to the 3 peaks in front of him. However, at this moment, a dangerous aura suddenly broke into Muyu's perception. Muyu stopped abruptly. What's wrong? Little Shuai asked curiously. Muyu looked around doubtfully, and an ominous premonition suddenly surged in his heart. There's a powerful aura approaching here. Muyu's hand had been touching the trees. The aura of the trees quickly filtered in his mind, and the whole forest became his eyes. Where is it? While Muyu was hesitating, Taoist Yuanda, Zhuge Shaosheng, and others had already passed through the woods. Muyu was puzzled. When he was about to continue moving forward, he suddenly found that the trees in front of him seemed to have some abnormalities. This aura, a familiar aura. Muyu was startled, and some of the hidden forces in her body began to stir. Yes, it's this aura. Not good. Muyu's face changed greatly. Over there. Muyu turned his head and looked behind him. There was a powerful and familiar aura coming this way. Moreover, this aura also carried a faint killing intent. Triple Palace. Muyu and Little Shuai looked at each other. They already knew who was coming. That old man told us to be careful of Zhuge Shaosheng. Be careful of Zhuge Shaosheng. Could it be that Zhuge Shaosheng has already been controlled by Triple Palace? Is he going to join forces with the people from Triple Palace to attack Taoist Yuanda? Or is he going to harm Dan Cauldron's sect? Little Shuai exclaimed. The people from Dan Cauldron's sect asked Zhuge Shaosheng to set up a teleportation array to protect the cultivators of Dan City from being slaughtered by Yumon. This was obviously not what Triple Palace wanted to see. Triple Palace needed the soul power produced by the dead. Let's go. Stop the people from Triple Palace first. Chapter 880. Muyu's figure had already stopped. The demonic chi that white ape demon king had left him on his shoulder had already begun to spread throughout his body, covering his killing aura. He had also retracted his killing intent. In the forest in front, a figure wearing a black hood slowly walked out, completely covering his entire body. This figure walked slowly in the forest, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. However, every step he took was 100 meters away. This person's aura was very calm, and even had a trace of sacred and inviolable dignity. It was this sacred aura that revealed a strong, killing intent. This killing intent was locked onto Taoist Yuanda, Zhuge Shaosheng, and the others who were in the sky above the forest, but those people above were completely unaware. What was strange was that even though his killing intent was awe-inspiring, this person looked like a righteous executioner. It was as if even if he killed someone, it would still make others feel that he was carrying out a righteous judgment. However, this figure suddenly sensed something and stopped moving, allowing Taoist Yuanda, Zhuge Shaosheng, and the others to leave. I sense your presence. The one who spoke was a woman with an ethereal voice. Her voice was very pleasant to the ears, making people think of a hazy and ethereal fairy speaking, dignified and elegant. This was Jin Xiun, who had been monitoring White Ape Demon King outside Clearwater City. No one answered. Although I couldn't see your figure, you had already revealed your killing intent. Jin Xiun looked around her. She saw countless leaves fluttering in the forest. She saw the branches trembling slightly. There were also insects chirping. In the distance, demonic beasts roamed freely. However, there was no one in the forest. She saw nothing. Muyi was 10 meters in front of her, coldly watching this person from the third palace. When facing this person from the third palace, the killing intent in his heart was like a monstrous wave. He wished he could tear this woman in front of him apart. No matter how righteous her aura was, no matter how ethereal her voice was, she deserved to die. However, he hid his killing intent very well. The woman in front of him gave him a very dangerous feeling. She was even more powerful than Gu Chaofeng, who he had encountered in the desert. Mu Yu's current advantage was his blood shrouding heaven. As long as he did not make a move, the other party would not be able to see him. Mu Yu was waiting for an opportunity to kill him in one strike. I'm very curious. I can feel our power in your body. When did you obtain soul power? Jin Xiun asked. Mu Yu clenched his fists. Sure enough, even Jin Xiun knew about this. Actually, I can tell you where the soul power in your body came from. Jin Xiun seemed to be talking to herself. Mu Yu was already accumulating power. Now that the other party did not know where he was, this was his advantage. If he couldn't kill this woman in one strike, then it would be difficult to kill her later. This was because Mu Yu's location would be exposed, and the two of them would definitely have a fierce battle. It would not be easy for Mu Yu to kill Jin Xiun. He had soul power in his body, so Jin Xiun could hurt him. Our master discovered a long time ago that there were many people who didn't produce soul power after death, so we've been investigating this matter. Later, we found out from various clues that these people who didn't produce soul power were all killed by you. You sucked their soul power away. Jin Xiun smiled and said, You never understood what soul power meant, did you? It's impossible for you to use our soul power because with your temperament, you can't do such a thing. Even though you've hidden your killing intent very well. If you want to kill me, I can capture you next. Jin Xiun's gaze was still focused on the fallen leaves around her. She was paying attention to the flow of the air and the changes in the spiritual energy. Jin Xiun began to walk. This time, she was like an ordinary person. She took large strides forward. Every step was so casual, but every step was so austere. Creak, creak, creak. Her footsteps made crisp sounds as they landed on the leaves. Only Jin Xiun's footsteps could be heard in the forest. She was only one step away from Mu Yu, but she still couldn't see where Mu Yu was. Mu Yu didn't make a move either. If he did, he would expose his location. If he didn't kill her the first time, it would be even more impossible to kill her later. Mu Yu was waiting for the opportunity to kill. Jin Xiun was already standing side by side with Mu Yu. Are you wondering why I'm here? Jin Xiun suddenly stopped on Mu Yu's right side. The two of them were only 3 inches apart. The distance was very short, but between experts, 3 inches was enough for a lot of fights to erupt. The two of them stood side by side, but their faces were facing opposite directions. Time seemed to have stopped at that moment. Muyu could even hear the faint breathing of the other party. He was ready to make a move, because this was the best opportunity. A withered yellow leaf slowly fell from the treetops. It spun and fell towards the space between the two of them. There seemed to be a ripple in the air. The fallen leaf suddenly glowed with vitality. In an instant, countless branches emerged from the veins of the leaf and surged towards Jin Shiyun. The countless leaves on the ground also streaked across the void like sharp flying knives, sharply slicing towards Jin Shiyun. At this moment, Muyu's shadow clone sword had already made a move. Green light burst out, revealing its sharpness. Sword chi was awe-inspiring. Swoosh! In the spinning leaves, the 3-foot green sword pierced towards Jin Shiyun with a terrifying killing intent. 3 inches apart, one strike to kill. However, Jin Shiyun suddenly let out a crisp laughter. Her entire body was like an illusion that shattered. When she reappeared, she was already behind Muyu. "I found you." 12 white pearls appeared on Jin Shiyun's body. The pearls emitted a sacred light, crushing all the leaves that were attacking her. Muyu's sword was also blocked by a white barrier. Little Shuai let out a soft, because he remembered that Yi Fian and Gu Chaofeng both had 13 white pearls on them. "I'm not Gu Chaofeng, who will be killed so easily by you." Jin Shiyun's body emitted a very powerful aura. Muyu did not waste any time. The sword light rose from the ground and slashed towards Jin Shiyun. As long as this sword light rushed into the sky, it would definitely alarm Taoist Yuanda and the others in front, reminding them to be careful. However, the surrounding forest suddenly trembled slightly. Suddenly, countless white lights came from all directions, blocking Muyu's sword chi and preventing it from going out of the forest. Back then, you used a formation to trap Gu Chaofeng in the desert. I'm just returning the favor. Jin Shiyun was actually prepared. This forest had already been blocked by Jin Shiyun's method, which was equivalent to trapping Muyu in it. I think you've already guessed who I'm going to kill. However, do you really think I came alone? Jin Shiyun continued. Jin Shiyun's words shocked Muyu. Could it be that other than Jin Shiyun, there was also Yi Fian? I only need to restrain you. The person who's going to make a move is not me. Jin Shiyun once again let out an ethereal laughter. Unforgivable. The formation runes under Muyu's feet flashed, and he rushed towards Jin Shiyun. If he wanted to leave this place, he must first kill the woman in front of him. The 12 white beads suddenly strung together like a necklace. The air seemed to become a little sticky, and Muyu's sword chi was suddenly swept away. However, Jin Shiyun's figure had already retreated. She did not want to fight with Muyu. You killed Gu Chaofeng. I will kill the people you care about and then capture you. This is fair. Jin Shiyun did not plan to attack Muyu. She wanted to wait for her people to kill the people who were protecting Muyu before attacking Muyu. Muyu's heart was already filled with anger. He held 3 of the white ape demon king's hair in his hand. Only by using the white ape demon king's domain power, shattering the Star River, could he kill Jin Shiyun in one move. Then, he would rush towards Taoist Yuanda and Zhuge Shaosheng. However, there was a sudden change in the forest. The sky seemed to have suddenly turned gloomy. It was clear that the sky was clear for a quarter of an hour, but in the next moment, it was as if darkness had descended. The forest was originally covered by the white brilliance of Jin Shiyun, but at this moment, the white brilliance seemed to be suppressed by some strange darkness. Muyu and Jin Shiyun could not help but stop. They did not act rashly because the strange aura that had suddenly appeared gave them a great sense of oppression. The two of them stared intently at a camphor tree in front of them. The camphor tree covered the sky, and the shadow under the tree became incomparably dark as if it had been splashed with ink. It was like an endless dark abyss that no light could shine through. Even the white brilliance of Jin Shiyun could not cast on the shadow. A shadow slowly emerged from the shadow of the camphor tree, as if it had been standing there for a long time. It seemed to have merged with the shadow of the camphor tree. A layer of frost began to form on the surrounding trees, and the temperature dropped rapidly, as if winter was coming. Muyu's heart skipped a beat. Shadow Killer Winter's Solstice. He definitely recognized this aura. It was Shadow Killer Winter's Solstice who had killed all the people from the Gate of Hell in a few breaths of time in the abandoned mountain village outside Cheonan City. Muyu's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. Jin Xian alone was already very difficult for Muyu to deal with, but he did not expect Shadow Killer Winter's Solstice to appear. He knew that he was not a match for Shadow Killer Winter's Solstice in a one-on-one fight, let alone two people at the same time. Shadow Killer Winter's Solstice? What are you doing here? Jin Xian suddenly asked. Jin Xian's tone was mixed with a trace of doubt and surprise, which made Muyu startled. Shadow Killer Winter's Solstice was not invited by Jin Xian? I'm here to carry out a mission. Shadow Killer Winter's Solstice's voice was very bleak, like cold iron without any fluctuations. What mission? The mission cannot be revealed. A snow eagle flew in the sky and nimbly shuttled through the forest. Its shadow streaked across the branches and flashed across the ground before it arrived under the camphor tree. At that moment, Shadow Killer Winter's Solstice moved. With every step he took, the snow eagle's shadow shifted forward. The snow eagle's flight was very fast. Every step he took was up and down in the forest. Then, he landed in Muyu's shadow. But I can reveal the mission to you. Chapter 881. Daoist Yuanda and Zhuge Shaosheng had already passed through the sky above the forest and flew towards the three mountains. However, there was still a hidden aura that was faintly discernible and locked onto them. They had no idea that danger was gradually approaching. Sect Master Zhuge, Yaman is currently acting recklessly in the cultivation world. With your array faction around, it is truly a blessing for the cultivation world. In the future, if the Yaman were to fight with the cultivators, then the cultivators would definitely be safer. You have a long way to go. Daoist Yuanda laughed. All sorts of mysterious array techniques could be used to deal with Yaman. Array masters would only be valued at times like this. Zhuge Shaosheng cupped his hands and said, Senior Yuanda is praising our array faction. Against Yaman, our array faction's disciples and elders are unable to fight for a long time and can only rely on array techniques to support us. We are truly ashamed. Master Lu and the rest nodded slightly. This was the disadvantage of being an array master. As Xiantian array masters, they would expend a considerable amount of array foundations during battle. It was not worth it to let them fight. Their role was to set up all sorts of defensive arrays. Offensive arrays would require many cultivators to use them at the same time. Daoist Yuanda laughed. You don't have to worry too much about it. Compared to you array masters, us alchemists are not suited for battle. We can only be responsible for rescue. The alchemists of Danding sect would play the role of a doctor in the battle between the humans and Yaman. They would use pills to treat the injured cultivators, or use pills to allow the cultivators to display powerful combat strength for a short period of time. There were 3 mountains in front of them. They had already passed the first mountain. The war between the humans and Yaman is already unavoidable. Us array masters and alchemists should just perform our duties. Zhuge Shaosheng smiled and nodded. Sect Master Zhuge is right. Daoist Yuanda led everyone and continued to fly towards the second mountain. But at this moment, Daoist Yuanda suddenly let out a slight cry of surprise and stopped. What happened? Zhuge Shaosheng looked at Daoist Yuanda's actions and asked puzzledly. I feel that something is wrong. Yao Wuji, come over and confirm it. Daoist Yuanda carefully looked around before his gaze landed on the second mountain. The second mountain was lush with vegetation, with pine and cypress trees providing shade. There were also strange, jagged stone peaks intersecting with each other. Yao Wuji also flew to Daoist Yuanda's side and looked at the second mountain. Then he frowned. Senior uncle, this mountain does look very normal and different, but I can't tell what's different. Daoist Yuanda said solemnly. Yao Wuji nodded. This was the territory of the Pill Cauldron sect, and these 3 mountains were also the places they had to pass through when traveling from Pill City to the Pill Cauldron sect. After walking for dozens of years, they were very familiar with them, but today this mountain suddenly gave them a strange feeling. Yet, he couldn't put his finger on it. Maybe he was being paranoid? Let's hurry back and not delay the important matters. Martial Uncle. Outsiders might not know the nature of the old man, but Yao Wuji knew it very well. Usually, the old man would always act frivolously in front of his own people. Sometimes, when he went to a dead end, even Taoist Yundan would be helpless against him. If there was anything strange, he would definitely go and check it out. Zhuge Xiaoxing's eyes flashed with a strange light. Because they were not familiar with the terrain here, they did not express any opinions and only waited for Taoist Yuanda's instructions. Taoist Yuanda seemed to feel that it was not good to delay any longer. However, his eyes were still filled with doubt as he said, "I don't know why, but I feel a little uneasy today. What's the problem?" After thinking for a moment, Taoist Yuanda said, "Sect Master Zhuge, we've embarrassed ourselves in front of you. Let's go." After saying that, he led everyone and flew towards the second mountain. However, at this moment, a sudden change occurred. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The stones rapidly floated in the air and arranged themselves in a strange yet orderly manner, surrounding Taoist Yuanda, Zhuge Xiaosheng, and the rest. Following that, on top of each stone, a human figure of different colors slowly appeared. These human figures were about the same height and appearance as cultivators. However, their skin seemed to be wrapped in a layer of hard cuticle. Some were very rough, some were very smooth, and some were crystal clear like diamonds. Tu Yaman, Taoist Yuanda, Zhuge Xiaosheng, and the rest's faces changed greatly. They never expected to meet so many Tu Yaman here. If they counted carefully, there were probably no less than 1,000 of them. Looks like the few of you are the people we're looking for. The leader was a stone man whose entire body was pitch black with a strange purple light. He was 2 meters tall, and every inch of his skin was uneven. However, he contained an incomparably powerful strength. The fist in his hand was like a gust of wind as he punched his chest, producing rolling thunder. It was as if a punch could shatter mountains and rivers, shatter the void, causing people to tremble in fear. The tribulation passing stage 2 Yaman priest. The leaves in the forest fluttered and the atmosphere was very oppressive. The snow eagle landed on the treetop above Mu Yu and stretched its wings in satisfaction. However, it did not take off. Its shadow overlapped with Mu Yu's shadow. Shadow Kill Winter Solstice stood in Mu Yu's shadow. There was only a blurry light and shadow, making it impossible to see his true appearance. "I'm not interested in your mission." The sword in Mu Yu's hand was ready to strike. He had faced Shadow Kill's Qing Ming and knew how powerful the shadow stealth technique was. However, Shadow Kill Winter Solstice gave him a feeling of danger. "I'm here to accept your request," Shadow Kill Winter Solstice said coldly. "Accept my request?" Mu Yu frowned slightly. Colorful leaves fell from the treetop and landed on Shadow Kill Winter Solstice's body. However, they passed through his body and continued to fall on the ground. It was as if his body was a shadow, illusory and unfathomable. "You have a mission for me." Shadow Kill Winter Solstice's voice was still as calm as ever. It was low but seemed to be sharp. Mu Yu's doubts deepened. He pondered for a moment and said, "You can accept any mission as long as the price is fair. Even if you kill someone from the third palace, it's the same no matter who you kill." Shadow Kill Winter Solstice did not show any strange expression because of the third palace. "Price? 3 stalks of Heavenly Heart Resurrection Grass." "You mean this?" 3 blue stalks of Heavenly Heart Resurrection Grass appeared in the void in front of Mu Yu. Without the aura of slaughter, Mu Yu cannot do it. The plants that his Mu Ling transformed into had a strong aura of slaughter. The Heavenly Heart Resurrection Grass was a very rare plant. Even if one paid a high price, one might not be able to buy it. If one did not want to have the aura of slaughter, one had to find it himself. "Why do you need this?" "That's none of your business." Shadow kill winter solstice did not explain. Muyu looked at Jin Shiyun, who did not speak. He wanted to quickly leave this place and save Taoist Yuanda. I can't give it to you now. When you find it, I'll take it from you. Shadow kill winter solstice said coldly. Okay, kill her. Muyu looked at Jin Shiyun. The snow eagle on the treetop flapped its wings and flew up. Several feathers fell from its body. The feathers fluttered in the air, leaving countless faint shadows on the ground. Deal. Shadow kill winter solstice had already disappeared into Muyu's shadow. His voice echoed in the forest as if he had turned into a shadow messenger of slaughter. He was everywhere. A shadow blade slashed out and cut a hole in the sky above the white forest. Jin Shiyun's trap was torn apart. Thank you. Muyu wanted to kill Jin Shiyun with his own hands, but he had more important things to do now. Today, Shiyun didn't stop Muyu because she knew that she couldn't. Shadow kill winter solstice. Do you know the consequences of obstructing our threefold palace? Jin Shiyun stood in place. She could not sense Shadow kill winter solstice's specific location. I'm only in charge of the mission. I'm an extreme immortal, but you're not. If you kill me, you won't be able to live. Jin Shiyun felt more and more pressure. However, Shadow kill winter solstice did not say anything else. Those feathers fluttered lightly in the air, leaving behind faint shadows. Suddenly, countless shadow blades jumped out. They were like the shadows of the Grim Reaper, binding Jin Shiyun. Muyu, I forgot to tell you that I brought more than one helper this time. Jin Shiyun looked at Muyu, who was already preparing to leave, and let out a pleasant laugh. Muyu's heart skipped a beat. He had just left the forest when a figure once again blocked his path. Jin Shiyun is right. Yi Fian was already waiting for him outside. The second mountain had already been completely destroyed, turning into Yumon, surrounding Taoist Yuanda and Zhuge Shaosheng. Priest Tu Yumeng, Zhuge Shaosheng said in a deep voice. Priest Tu Yumeng, who possessed the power of the earth, was currently leading the Yumon. According to the survivors of Dongsha City, Priest Tu Yumeng was nearly 20 meters tall and possessed incomparably terrifying destructive power. In front of them was clearly his shrunken body, but the domineering and terrifying killing aura on his body made everyone feel as if they were in an Azura battlefield. Why would a Yumon appear here? Taoist Yuanda was also shocked. This place was relatively close to the Pill Cauldron sect, but he did not expect a Yumon to mix in. Not to mention, Priest Tu Yuming's aura far surpassed his. Let's go. Taoist Yuanda did not hesitate to protect everyone and wanted to retreat downwards. However, under the control of each Yumon, the densely packed rocks in the air had already formed a huge sphere with a radius of 100 meters, enveloping them within. Taoist Yuanda's walking stick struck out once again, striking the encirclement of Yumon. Boom! A loud sound rang out, but Taoist Yuanda's arm trembled, but the rocks did not move at all. There is a certain amount of space between these broken stones, but each stone was connected to each other by a special force. It was the earth elemental technique of the 5 elements formation. Not only did the Yumon possess terrifying strength, it also possessed a powerful defense. Taoist Yuanda was a pill master and was not proficient in fighting, so he was unable to break through Tu Yuming's defense. Chapter 882. Above the forest, Yi Fian's figure blocked Muyu's path. This time, he didn't need to identify Muyu's position, because Muyu's entire body was filled with intense killing intent. He was as bright as a lamp in the dark night. 13 white pearls revolve around Yi Fian's body. They were as dazzling as 13 stars, firmly locking onto Muyu's position. A huge explosion could be heard from afar. It shook the clouds and alerted Muyu. The killing intent was like the sun in the sky. It was almost the same as Muyu's. Priest Tu Yumeng, they are indeed under your control. Priest Tu Yumeng and the people from the third palace appeared here at the same time. It was obvious that the 4 powerful priests Tu Yumeng were under the command of the third palace. Priest Tu Yumeng destroyed a city with hundreds of thousands of self-cultivators for the sake of killing intent. This meant that the souls of hundreds of thousands of self-cultivators would become the source of power for the third palace. The sad thing was that the self-cultivators were still hoping that the third palace could lead them to defeat Yaman. You're wrong. The outside world only knows that you were the one who summoned Yaman. Yi Fian laughed. His laughter was like a spring breeze. It was very mellow. Anyone would think that he was a good person just by looking at his laughter. You're an accomplice of evil, yet you're still pretending to be virtuous. You filthy maggot. Mu Yu's shadow clone sword was already out. Thousands of sword chi rose from the ground and slashed towards Yi Fian. He had to end this quickly. Priest Tu Yuming's strength was very terrifying. It was not something that a tribulation passing stage alchemist like Yuan the Taoist could handle. Once Mu Yu was held back, Yuan the Taoist and the others would be doomed. The self-cultivators will only know that I'm here to capture you on behalf of the third palace. The black clothes on Yi Fian's body dispersed, revealing his body that was glowing with white light. There was no need to hide here anymore. This place was sealed by Tu Yaman. No self-cultivators would come here. The 13 white pearls began to spin rapidly, emitting rays of light that formed a barrier in front of him, blocking Mu Yu's sword chi. He has 13 white pearls, and the white which below has 12 white pearls. Could it be that the fewer pearls one has, the stronger one is? Little Shuai asked from Mu Yu's bosom. No matter how many beads there are, they all deserve to die. The murderous aura made Mu Yu seem like a cold killing god. His sword energy pierced straight into the clouds like a gigantic sword that reached the heavens, stirring up the wind and clouds in the sky. It was mixed with an aura that could destroy the heaven and earth, causing the air to suddenly stagnate. The giant's sword, which contained horrifying power, broke the void and slashed toward Yi Fian. Soul Technique Luoyin, Soul Shaking Bell. Yi Fian didn't dare to underestimate Mu Yu's insufferably arrogant sword. He was also slightly shocked because Mu Yu seemed to be much stronger than when he met him at the Extreme Immortal Pavilion in Lanchi City. The 13 white pearls, which were the size of a fist, merged together in front of Yi Fian. The white pearls turned into a huge white ball that was hundreds of meters tall, like a bright moon. Then, the huge white ball seemed to melt, revealing a huge white ancient bell that was carved with strange patterns. This huge soul-shaking bell instantly enveloped Yi Fian. At the same time, the entire soul-shaking bell became transparent. One could clearly see that Yi Fian had landed in the middle of the soul-shaking bell. At the same time, Mu Yu's sword chi, which was mixed with a tyrannical, murderous aura, descended from the sky and blasted onto the soul-shaking bell. Buzz! When the soul-shaking bell and the sword chi collided, it let out a sharp sound. This sound spread out in all directions in the form of white waves. The sound waves were clearly visible. The spiritual chi in the air also surged like layers of huge waves, covering Mu Yu. Just as the sharp sound entered Mu Yu's ears, countless illusions appeared in Mu Yu's mind. He saw the scene of Zhuge Shaosheng using a powerful array technique to directly kill Taoist Yuanda. Mu Yu broke free from the illusions in an instant. The sound waves of the soul-shaking bell could actually cause the illusions that one was most worried about to appear in one's mind and disturb one's mind. When he came back to his senses, Yi Fian had already formed an incantation in the soul-shaking bell. He struck out with his palm and blasted onto the soul-shaking bell. The soul-shaking bell instantly trembled, and the white sound waves swept out again. They were like raging waves that covered Mu Yu. Mu Yu quickly sealed off his sense of hearing. Only in this way would he not be affected by the soul-shaking clock. The sword chi in his hand rotated, and the clouds in the sky seemed to revolve around his soul-splitting sword, forming a whirlpool. The sword will of the heavens kept merging into his soul-splitting sword. One sword shaking the 9 heavens. The sword chi instantly descended. It was like a light boat riding the wind and breaking the waves in the sky. It shattered the raging waves of sound waves and blasted onto the soul-shaking bell again. Buzz! The sharp sound wave spread out again, but the soul-shaking clock only trembled slightly, resisting the sword intent from the sky. However, the soul-shaking clock's shape became more solid. Yi Fian's face, which had looked holy before, also showed a trace of seriousness. However, Muyu had already condensed the sword intent from the heavens again. This sword intent was derived from the artistic conception that little commander used to control the heavens. He had also comprehended part of it. When the sword slashed down again, the air in the void seemed to be violently compressed. There were even gaps in the air. The cyan light shone on the entire forest, which looked extremely cold. Soul technique Luoyin, soul shaking back to nothing. Yi Fian struck out with his palm again and blasted onto the soul-shaking bell. The soul-shaking bell made a soft sound. All the terrifying sound waves gathered together and rotated with each other to form a huge sound wave whirlwind. The whirlwind made the air explode loudly. It met Muyu's sword intent from the heavens. Whoosh! The sound waves rotated rapidly and forcibly slowed down Muyu's sword chi's descent. The two sides were in a deadlock in the air for a moment. My soul-shaking bell is not something that you can avoid by blocking your hearing. At the same time, Yi Fian's entire body turned into a phantom and continuously blasted onto the soul-shaking bell. Every time his palm and foot landed on the soul-shaking bell, the soul-shaking bell would emit stronger white sound waves. These white sound waves bypassed the sword intent from different angles and went towards Muyu's body. Golden array patterns instantly covered Muyu's body. It was like layers of ripples. Those white sound waves surrounded Muyu and kept rolling forward. They merged into the golden array patterns and kept moving forward. However, they could never reach Muyu's side. Array, so close, yet worlds apart. However, more and more white sound waves swept out from the soul buster bell, fusing into the golden runes. The pressure on Muyu's array technique also increased. He could only maintain his monstrous sword intent as his figure flashed and retreated. At this time, the tumbling white sound waves had already shattered so close, yet worlds apart, and brushed past him. One of the small sound waves even touched his shoulder. Hiss! Like being burned by fire, Muyu felt like his shoulder was pierced by a sharp blade. His entire shoulder was burning with pain. An attack on the soul. The white sound waves emitted from the soul-shaking bell could shake the soul and cause damage to it directly. The pain on Muyu's body slowed him down. The white sound waves had already surrounded him from the soul-shaking bell again. This time he couldn't dodge them. This time, I will make you beg for death. Yi Fian laughed out loud. He could already tell that Muyu couldn't dodge and could only take this attack head-on. With so many white sound waves touching his body, his soul would be damaged. Once the soul was damaged, it would lose the ability to move. Even the people from the third palace couldn't escape. Muyu freed his left hand. Array patterns wrapped around his fingertips and rippled in front of his chest. Then, like a transparent ripple, it condensed and covered his entire body. At this moment, the white sound waves also hit him. What? Those white sound waves didn't hurt Muyu as much as Yi Fian imagined. Instead, they hit Muyu's body and passed through Muyu's body. It was as if they didn't affect Muyu at all. A whistling sound came from behind the soul-shaking bell. Yi Fian turned his head and saw that the white sound waves that he used to attack Muyu had bypassed Muyu and were coming towards him. It was the mirror image array. It was an array that Dead Tree had taught Muyu how to improve. These white sound waves were guided to the other side by Muyu in an ingenious way. They escaped Yi Fian's perception and hit the soul-shaking clock. The soul-shaking clock was as steady as a mountain in the air. It was powerful but heavy. Even Yi Fian didn't have time to dodge. Boom! The white sound wave came out of the Soul Buster Bell. When it hit the Soul Buster Bell again, it wasn't absorbed by the Soul Buster Bell. Instead, it let out an earth-shattering boom, causing the entire Soul Buster Bell to tremble rapidly. Poochie! Blood spurted out from Yi Fian's mouth and splashed onto the soul-shaking bell. His originally glowing white, holy face suddenly revealed a painful expression. His entire body also let out a painful groan. I was wondering why this little idiot with white light was hiding in the bell and didn't die after being hit by the heaven sword. It turns out that the only thing that can hurt him is his own sound waves. Little Schwein muttered, "You can hurt yourself even if you hurt others. Is that so?" Muyu coldly looked at Yi Fian, whose aura had weakened. Yi Fian's soul-shaking bell was too powerful. The destructive power of the white sound waves was too strong. It was so strong that even he would be hurt by his own sound waves. Yi Fian was also shocked and furious. In the past, when he used the soul-shaking bell, he would always control the direction of the white sound waves. He wouldn't let the white sound waves touch the soul-shaking bell. He didn't expect that he would suffer under Muyu's array this time. Boom! The sound of countless huge rocks crashing could be heard from afar. Muyu was slightly shocked. "Muyu, you have to hurry and help Taoist Yuanda and the others. Otherwise, they will be killed by Yumon or the controlled Zhuge Shaosheng." Little Shui reminded. Muyu nodded. He looked at Yi Fian and then looked at the hurricane formed by the sound waves that were in a deadlock with his sword intent. 3 white hairs had already appeared in his hand. "Since you're afraid of your own sound waves, I'll give you a hand." Muyu's spiritual energy had already been channeled into one of the white hairs. This was the domain ability that White Ape Demon King had given him to use to save his life. In order to save Taoist Yuanda and Zhuge Shaosheng, who were trapped by Yumon, he had no choice but to use the power of his domain. Chapter 883. The sword intent in the sky seemed to tremble again, as if it wanted to shatter the heavens. The entire sky was shrouded in green light, and the clouds in the sky were torn into strips. They were like sharp flying swords, and the tip of each sword was pointed at the sword chi. The sword slashed down, and a majestic power was added to the sword chi. The entire sky became incomparably heavy, as if the heavens were about to collapse. It blocked Yi Fian's heart, and it made Yi Fian feel as if there was a heavy mountain pressing down on his heart. "I don't believe it." Yi Fian gritted his teeth and roared. The veins on his face were bulging, and he had lost his previous holy expression. On the contrary, he had become incomparably ferocious. He never thought that Muyu's strength would increase so terrifyingly in just a month. He had become completely unstoppable. However, when the sword that could destroy the heavens and earth pressed down again, he seemed to have sensed something. He exclaimed, "Domain power?" The White Ape Demon King's domain power, shattering the Milky Way. However, it was too late to say anything now. The shadow, swords mixed with the majestic heavenly might, came crashing down from the sky, shattering the void. It also shattered the white soul spell that was originally surrounded by Jin Xian. All the trees were instantly shattered and turned into ashes, as if they couldn't withstand this terrifying pressure. The 2 shadows in the forest had already flashed out. Today's Shiyun and Shadow Kill Winter Solstice had turned into phantoms. The snow eagle rapidly flew through the air, sealing off all of today's Shiyun's escape routes. "Yi Fian, activate the Divine Soul Array," Jin Xian shouted. Her voice was no longer as ethereal and pleasant as before. On the contrary, she seemed very flustered. The holy white light on her body was flickering, and she became extremely dispirited. "No, it's too far away. The control of the Divine Soul Array has already been broken." Yi Fian wanted to escape, but his body was firmly locked by the sword intent. The sword intent came down from the sky, and it was incomparably fast. If he put away the soul-shaking bell, he would definitely die under this terrifying sword. He could only block it. Soul technique roar. Soul-shaking roar. Yi Fian roared. He condensed powerful soul force in his hands and slapped the Soul Buster Bell 3 times. The Soul Buster Bell instantly rang. 3 white sound waves swept out from the Soul Buster Bell and turned into 3 giant hands. These 3 giant hands were filled with extremely violent sound waves. They quickly met the sword. However, the sword intent in the sky was filled with killing intent. Tens of thousands of sword chi streaked across the sky, forming an extremely strong gale. This gale forcibly blocked the three giant white hands formed by sound waves. All the sound waves were affected by the sword chi and changed their direction, blasting towards the soul-shaking clock. Boom! The seemingly indestructible soul-buster clock was hit by the sound wave. The violent sound wave spread through the entire soul-buster clock, and the sound wave was turned around by the soul-buster clock to attack Yifian. Yifian let out a blood-curdling scream. He was hit by his own sound wave, which was like countless sharp blades attacking his soul. His soul was destroyed in an instant. In the blink of an eye, his scream stopped abruptly. His soul was destroyed. At this moment, Muyu's sword chi fell again, shattering the soul-buster clock and striking Yifian's body, turning Yifian into ashes. Muyu, if you kill one more of my people, I will definitely kill everyone related to you to take revenge. Jin Xian watched as Yifian was shattered by the sword chi in front of her. However, she was also entangled by Shadow, Killer Winter Solstice. She knew that if she stayed any longer, she would definitely become a ghost under Muyu's sword. The 12 white pearls around her had already split open the void and brought her away from this battlefield. Shadow Killer Winter Solstice had already disappeared. Muyu, Yifian just said that the Divine Soul Array is too far away. This means that Zhuge Shaosheng is still not under control. Quick, don't let Jin Shiyun find a chance to control Zhuge Shaosheng. Otherwise, Taoist Yuanda and the others will be killed by Zhuge, Shaosheng, and Yaman. Little Shuai shouted. Killing Taoist Yuanda was only one of the reasons. Zhuge Shaosheng knew powerful array techniques. If he killed Taoist Yuanda and let Tu Yumeng disguise himself as Taoist Yuanda and sneak into the Danding sect, then the Danding sect would be doomed. One had to know that as long as Tu Yumeng didn't use the power of the 5 elements, he would be able to disguise himself like a human. I know. The sword chi in the sky had already disappeared. Muyu's face had also become very pale. The White Ape Demon King's domain of power might be very powerful, but most of the spiritual power in his body had already been used up. He had never wanted to use the domain of power because it consumed a lot of spiritual power when he used it with his tribulation stage cultivation. Especially when he was guiding the sword intent in the sky, it required a lot of spiritual power to support it. In addition to using the domain of power, almost 2/3 of his spiritual power was gone. Can you still use the domain of power? Little Shuai asked worriedly. Tu Yumeng was a tribulation stage expert who possessed the power of slaughter. I only know that they can't die. Muyu took 2 deep breaths and rushed into the distance. The Divine Soul Array had indeed not been activated, but Taoist Yuanda and Zhuge Shaosheng were already in danger. Yaman had surrounded Taoist Yuanda and Zhuge Shaosheng, not giving them any chance to break through. Priest Tu Yumeng was filled with explosive power. Looking at Taoist Yuanda, who was charging towards him, he laughed arrogantly and punched out. Bang! Taoist Yuanda was sent flying. Blood splattered in the air and dyed his long robe red. He was only an alchemist with low combat strength. Even though he had the cultivation of a tribulation stage, he was not suitable for battle. Facing Tu Yumeng, who had a murderous aura, he was not a match for him. Be careful! Zhuge Shaosheng had already rushed forward and caught Taoist Yuanda. At the same time, powerful formation runes instantly covered the area in front of him. Countless formation runes merged into the void, and the void seemed to be blocked by countless white tentacles, taking Priest Tu Yumeng's punch head-on. Crash! All of Zhuge Shaosheng's defensive runes were destroyed by Tu Yumeng. However, Zhuge Shaosheng also quickly retreated with Taoist Yuanda and landed beside other people. Martial Uncle, Medicine Master, went forward to support Taoist Yuanda and quickly fed him the medicinal pill in his hand. I'm fine. Taoist Yuanda's expression was heavy as he stabilized his body. He stuffed a few more medicinal pills into his mouth, and the aura on his body became stronger by 30%. However, his heart sank. With his tribulation stage cultivation, he was unable to take a punch from Tu Yumeng, let alone others. Chenghong, protect little Hao. Master Lu, you and I will fight together, Zhuge Xiaosheng said solemnly. White runes instantly covered his entire body as he separated from Taoist Yuanda and stood on the other side. Yes, Master Lu and Mu Qinghong looked solemn as they stood in front of Mu Hao, who was pale with fright, to protect him in the middle. They all knew Mu Hao's identity. He was a younger brother of their sect master, Mu Yu. Originally, they brought him out this time to see the world. However, they did not expect to be ambushed by Yumon and bring Mu Hao into danger. Mu Hao gritted his teeth. Under the careful guidance of Zhuge, Xiaosheng, and Master Lu for the past 2 years, his cultivation had reached the Jindan period. However, in the face of so many Yumon, the cultivation of the Jindan period was not enough. I heard that as long as I kill a few of you who are in the way, it will be enough. Priest Tu Yumeng let out a muffled sound as he laughed sinisterly. With a wave of his hand, countless Yumeng devils began to lift up their own stones, and then countless stones instantly smashed down towards Taoist Yuanda and the others. Evil creature, how dare you? Taoist Yuanda bellowed and waved his crutch again. A golden light rose from his body and met the flying gravel head-on. A powerful spiritual energy fluctuation instantly crushed the gravel, and the brutal aftershock continued to fly towards the Tu Yumeng. However, Tu Yumeng's earth element array emitted a yellow halo and dissolved all of his attacks. However, the overwhelming stones came from all directions, and Taoist Yuanda's attacks were simply overwhelmed. Qianli Divine Seal of Nothingness. The white 8 trigrams array pattern under Zhuge Xiaosheng's feet began to spin. 2 majestic array patterns suddenly surged out from the Qian and Li positions of the 8 trigrams. They coiled around Zhuge Xiaosheng's hands like 2 nimble dragons. Then he formed a complicated hand seal with his hands, and the 2 array patterns formed an 8 trigrams array pattern before his chest. The 8 trigrams array pattern shook violently, like a song from ancient times. With Zhuge Xiaosheng as the center, the array pattern spread out. The 8 trigrams array pattern had left his hands and split into thousands of 8 trigrams array patterns that spread out in all directions. Every 8 trigrams array pattern was extremely solemn, bringing with it an indomitable aura as it slashed across the stones. The stones that came into contact with the 8 trigrams array pattern turned into nothingness. Thunder Snake, Swift Shadow. Master Lu suddenly shouted. The 8 trigrams array pattern surged under his feet. Then, a blue ball of light gathered in his hands. Densely packed electric snakes lashed out, leaving behind afterimages in the air. They rolled towards the stones and destroyed thousands of stones. Yao Wuji was not good at fighting, but he had powerful explosive pills on him. With a wave of his hand, countless explosive pills rolled out. The moment they met with the stones, they instantly exploded. Powerful rumbling sounds could be heard incessantly. However, there were only stones of various colors in the air. Not a single one of those Tu Yumeng came up. It's time for the game to end. Priest Tu Yumeng took a step forward and laughed arrogantly. Once again, he threw out a punch and smashed it towards them. This punch seemed to have caused the air to change shape. The terrifying aura was violently compressed. The fist was not big, but it was like a mountain pressing down on everyone's chest, causing their breathing to become extremely sluggish. This punch, they would not be able to block it. Taoist Yuanda's expression changed drastically. Although he had the cultivation base of Tribulation Passing Stage, he did not have the battle prowess of a Tribulation Passing Stage cultivator. Facing this punch, he was helpless. I'll do it. Zhuge Xiaosheng's expression was solemn. He had already stood in front of Taoist Yuanda. He had the cultivation base of 9th heavenly layer of body fusion stage. Relying on the powerful battle prowess of a Xiantian array master, the strength he displayed was comparable to an ordinary Tribulation Passing Stage cultivator. His true battle prowess far surpassed Taoist Yuanda. In this place, his cultivation base was not the highest, but his strength was the strongest. facing Yaman who wanted to kill him. Zhuge Xiaosheng had never been afraid. However, Priest Tu Yumeng had an incomparably terrifying murderous aura. How could an ordinary tribulation passing stage cultivator compare to him? That punch could destroy heaven and earth, causing Zhuge Xiaosheng to feel powerless. Heavenly Heaven Trigram sealed the starry universe. The 8 trigrams array under Zhuge Xiaosheng's feet flowed rapidly. The 8 trigrams array shadows flashed out from time to time and formed a white 8 trigrams barrier in his hand. These barriers were formed by the 8 trigrams array shadows and formed a solid shield that enveloped everyone. Bang! Priest Tu Yuming's insufferably arrogant punch smashed onto Zhuge Xiaosheng's 8 trigram shield, and cracks instantly crawled all over it. Zhuge Xiaosheng's face turned pale. However, with his body integration stage cultivation base, he was able to forcefully withstand the terrifying punch of Priest Tu Yumeng. "Break for me!" Priest Tu Yumeng roared and smashed down again. This time, the 8 trigram shield was directly smashed into pieces. The formation runes scattered in all directions, and the violent force smashed onto Zhuge Xiaosheng's body. Zhuge Xiaosheng spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned incomparably pale. At this time, Taoist Yuan had already brought everyone out again. "Sect leader, are you all right?" Master Lu anxiously supported Zhuge Xiaosheng. No matter how powerful Zhuge Xiaosheng was, he was still only at the body integration stage. It was still too difficult for him to face Priest Tu Yumeng. With his current cultivation base, he would not be able to withstand 2 punches. Yao Wuji had already quickly taken out a healing pill and fed it to Zhuge Xiaosheng. However, facing such a situation, they were already turtles in a jar. Taoist Yuanda roared angrily as dozens of explosive pills shot out from his hand and surrounded Priest Tu Yumeng in all kinds of tricky positions. Explode. The dozens of explosive pills suddenly exploded, and a powerful explosion rang out around Priest Tu Yumeng. The power of the explosive pills was determined by the user's cultivation base. These explosive pills were equivalent to Taoist Yuanda releasing dozens of body integration stage attacks at the same time. The power had already reached the limit of what he could unleash. "Are you tickling me?" However, Tu Yumeng slowly walked out from the explosion. The exploding pills did not leave any wounds on his body. Tu Yuming's defense was simply too strong. Taoist Yuanda was not suited for battle, and thus he could not injure him. "You're too weak." Tu Yumeng casually waved his hand and sent Taoist Yuanda flying. "Those who were in the way die." Priest Tu Yumeng laughed arrogantly. Then he raised his fist again. Terrifying power gathered on his fist, and he smashed it down fiercely. "Looks like we really can't escape this calamity." Zhuge Xiaosheng sighed. In the face of such a powerful existence like Priest Tu Yumeng, there was no way to resist at all without the cultivation of the crossing calamity stage. With the cultivation of the 9th heavenly layer of the combination stage, it was already his limit to hold on for a moment. "It's a pity that I've brought Sect Master's younger brother into danger. It's my fault." Zhuge Xiaosheng looked at the pale Mu Hao and braced his heavily injured body to protect Mu Hao behind him. Tu Yuming's fist smashed down. This time, everyone felt a deep sense of despair. However, at this moment, another incomparably powerful and cold, murderous aura came from outside the Earth elemental array. "Do you think you can touch these people?" Chapter 884. A cold and emotionless voice was clearly transmitted into everyone's ears. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that someone would rush over at this time. It was as if someone had rushed over and pulled them up when they were about to fall into the abyss. Zhuge Xiaosheng and the others suddenly felt hope. "You Tu Yumeng all deserve to die." A violent sword chi rose from the ground and instantly became tens of thousands of feet long. The murderous sword chi struck the earth elemental spell formation. When the sword chi touched the earth elemental spell formation, the runes of the spell formation had quietly disappeared into the stones. Then, the indestructible earth elemental spell formation collapsed directly. However, the sword chi's murderous aura didn't diminish and continued to strike toward Priest Tu Yumeng. This sword chi was magnificent and domineering. It arrived in the blink of an eye with an extremely terrifying power. Even Priest Tu Yumeng didn't dare to underestimate it. He had no choice but to place his fist in front of his chest and collide with the domineering sword chi. Boom! The sword chi struck Priest Tu Yumeng's fist. Even though Priest Tu Yumeng's skin was thick and tough, he still felt a tremor. What surprised him was that the oncoming sword chi had spread to his entire body and was cutting his skin and flesh. "Get out of my way!" Priest Tu Yumeng shouted fiercely. His entire body shook with an explosive force and shook off the sword chi attached to his body. However, the sword chi turned into tens of thousands of tiny sword shadows and stabbed toward the Tu Yumeng, who were using the earth elemental spell formation. Bang! 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 Those Tu Yumeng who hadn't reached the form synthesis stage couldn't withstand Mu Yu's furious sword chi. Countless Tu Yumeng were instantly pierced by the sword chi and turned into powder. They turned into dust and drifted down from the sky. When the dust settled, Mu Yu's figure slowly appeared in front of Zhuge Xiaosheng and the others. He had his back to them and blocked all the danger. He was like a cold god of death. His murderous aura was awe-inspiring. Even Zhuge Xiaosheng and the others were horrified when they saw him. "You are..." Zhuge Xiaosheng and the others didn't recognize Mu Yu, because this murderous aura had already changed Mu Yu into a completely different person from the sunny and easygoing person he used to be. In addition, Mu Yu's formation skills were far above Zhuge Xiaosheng's, so even Zhuge Xiaosheng couldn't see through the illusion on Mu Yu's face. However, their hearts were thumping. No matter who the person in front of them was or what kind of aura he had saved their lives and pulled them back from the gate of hell. "My lord, be careful!" Taoist Yuanda could not help but exclaim. "I know. Protect yourselves." Mu Yu focused all his attention on Priest Tu Yumeng because he didn't have much spiritual power left. It was impossible for him to fight Tu Yumeng for a long time. He had to use the White Ape Demon King's domain power again, and he could only use it once more. Taoist Yuanda had also returned to Zhuge Xiaosheng and the others. He had also suffered a little injury, but it was not as serious as Zhuge Xiaosheng's. He looked warily at Mu Yu, who was emitting murderous intent in front of him, and his heart was filled with horror because this person's murderous aura was on the same level as Priest Tu Yumeng's. Zhuge Xiaosheng and the others were pleasantly surprised and began to guess Mu Yu's identity. They had never heard of such a powerful person in the human race. Priest Tu Yumeng watched his subordinates being crushed by Mu Yu's sword chi and felt the murderous aura in Mu Yu's body. He suddenly laughed and said, "It's really you. It's even easier to catch you." As he said that, he waved his fist again with murderous intent and blasted towards Mu Yu again. However, Mu Yu had already taken out the white fur of the White Ape Demon King. He had used one just now, and now he had two left. The domain power belonging to the Great Ascension stage spread out all of a sudden, enveloping him and Priest Tu Yumeng. Priest Tu Yumeng's expression changed drastically, and he exclaimed, "Domain? How can you have the cultivation of the Great Ascension stage? I'm here to kill you." Mu Yu had already raised the sword in his hand. This time, the power of the domain was added to his sword, but he did not try to communicate with the sword intent of the sky. He just made his sword seem as if it had become extremely heavy, and the sword aura that it emitted was even stronger than Priest Tu Yumeng's. The mountain-like sword chi seemed to have crushed the space, as if it had shattered the entire sky. The murderous sword chi firmly locked on a Priest Tu Yumeng and slashed down. "Bastard!" Priest Tu Yumeng roared in shock and anger. His body instantly became 100 meters tall. His fists left behind heavy afterimages in the air as they met the sword energy that was as heavy as a mountain. Boom! It was as if two mountains collided with each other, causing the whole ground to ripple violently. The aftermath of the sword chi swept out and actually cut the three mountains that were 1,000 meters tall in the middle. The broken mountains rumbled, but before they fell, they were cut off by countless violent sword chi. Kacha! Ah! Priest Tu Yuming screamed in horror. His huge fist, which was as big as a house, was directly cut into a bloody mess by Mu Yu's sword chi. His huge body, which was 1,000 feet tall, flew out and smashed heavily on the ground. Boom! The ground shook violently again, and countless cracks spread out rapidly from the ground where Priest Tu Yuming fell. These cracks were more than 100 meters wide and 10,000 meters long, as if the earth could not withstand such a strong blow. When Mu Yu used this sword, the spiritual power in his body was instantly drained, and he almost could not stand steadily. I have no spiritual power left. I can't kill him. Mu Yu originally wanted to use this sword to kill Priest Tu Yumeng, but his spiritual power was still not enough, and he could not fully unleash the power of the domain. So this sword only seriously injured Priest Tu Yumeng. But he gritted his teeth and once again gathered the almost dried-up spiritual power in his body. He had to kill Priest Tu Yumeng while Priest Tu Yumeng was seriously injured by the White Ape Demon King's domain power, so as to eliminate all future troubles. Daoist Yuanda threw out a pill in front of Mu Yu and shouted, "This is a level 7 divine spirit pill. It can quickly restore spiritual power." Although Daoist Yuanda did not have much combat power, he could see at a glance that Mu Yu was forcibly using the domain power, and the consumption was great. However, the divine spirit pill was a very powerful pill, but because it was so powerful, it could only be used once in a short period of time. Otherwise, Daoist Yuanda would not have only given one to Mu Yu. Mu Yu did not hesitate to take the divine spirit pill, and a powerful medicinal power spread through his body, forming a surging spiritual power that rushed to his limbs and bones. After the black and white spiritual power in Mu Yu's body met the medicinal power of the divine spirit pill, the black and white spiritual power that had been drained began to flow again. He took a deep breath, and the spiritual power that had been drained was slowly recovering. He had barely recovered 1/5 of his spiritual power, and he wanted to try to use the power of the domain again to kill Priest Tu Yumeng. All the minions of the third palace deserve to die. Mu Yu once again merged with the White Ape Demon King's third white hair, and a majestic power once again spread throughout his body. But this time, the power was weaker by half, because Mu Yu's current spiritual power was still not enough to support it. The sword Qi once again soared into the sky, and with a slash, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. The weak Yaman had already turned into ashes under this slash. The sword Qi broke through the air and slashed down towards Priest Tu Yumeng, who was hundreds of feet tall. Priest Tu Yumeng was already intimidated by Mu Yu's aura, and no longer had the arrogant look on his face. He roared and punched out, but this punch was not aimed at Mu Yu's sword Qi, but at the ground under his feet. At the same time, a white light spewed out from his fist and merged into the terrifying fist. Bang! The originally ravaged ground was once again torn apart, revealing a terrifying abyss, and Priest Tu Yumeng had already turned into a white shadow and disappeared into the abyss. Bastard! Just you wait. Your killing power will definitely belong to us. Priest Tu Yumeng left behind this final roar, and he did not dare to fight anymore. Even though Mu Yu's sword Qi was weaker by half, it was still the power of a domain, and it was too strong, and he could only choose to escape. Mu Yu's sword Qi also slammed into the abyss, and the mountains within a radius of 10,000 miles shook, and a terrifying tremor erupted. Waves of Qi rolled out from the ground with Mu Yu's sword Qi as the center, and it chased after Tu Yumeng, who had escaped into the depths of the ground. However, a white light flashed past Priest Tu Yumeng's body, and Priest Tu Yumeng had already escaped through the void like Jin Shiyun, and Mu Yu did not have enough spiritual power to chase after him. He actually knows the third palace's soul technique. Little Shuai exclaimed from Mu Yu's chest. Mu Yu coldly snorted. Priest Tu Yumeng had already become a pawn of the third palace, and it was not unreasonable for him to know some of the third palace's soul techniques. Otherwise, if Priest Tu Yumeng died, Yuman's strength would be greatly reduced, And how would they fight against the human race? The third palace would not allow any accidents to happen to the main force of this war, or else it would cause the war to end too early, and there would be too few deaths, and there would not be enough soul power. Has priest Tu Yumeng already escaped? Taoist Yuanda asked in bewilderment. Looks like we have finally escaped this calamity, Master Lu said with lingering fear. Zhuge Xiaoxing's aura was very weak, and he had suffered heavy injuries. Just now, he had forcefully withstood priest Tu Yumeng's punch, but with his cultivation, it was still too much for him. At this moment, Master Lu and Mu Chenghong were taking turns to heal him, and only then did his complexion turn slightly better. Taoist Yuanda had already given him the best medicinal pill, but it would still take a certain amount of time for the medicinal pill to take effect. It's good that you are fine. Fortunately, this lord came to save us. I am Taoist Yuanda of the Pill Cauldron sect. May I ask, Lord? Taoist Yuanda stood up and wanted to express his gratitude to Mu Yu. After all, Mu Yu's face was covered by an illusion array, and they could only see an unfamiliar face. However, Mu Yu suddenly turned around and grabbed the heavily injured Zhuge Xiaosheng. Lord, what are you doing? Taoist Yuanda was shocked. Chapter 885. Mu Yu's remaining spiritual energy quickly circulated around Zhuge Xiaosheng's body, but he did not find any trace of the divine soul array. There's no divine soul array. Mu Yu was puzzled. Sir, what are you doing? Our sect master needs treatment now. Master Lu said anxiously. Zhuge Xiaosheng reluctantly raised his head and looked at Mu Yu, gasping for breath. You're not being controlled, are you? Mu Yu asked. Zhuge Xiaosheng shook his head with difficulty. No, I'm sorry. Mu Yu was relieved and quickly let go of Zhuge Xiaosheng, sending Zhuge Xiaosheng back to Master Lu's side. Master Lu and Mu Yu helped Zhuge Xiaosheng up and looked at Mu Yu vigilantly, staying away from him. Mu Yu breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that he was paranoid. Zhuge Xiaosheng was obviously much more cautious than Master Lu. The divine soul array would not work on him. He had told Zhuge Xiaosheng in detail about the divine soul array in order to avoid the same thing that happened to Master Lu. And Zhuge Xiaosheng was very clear about how the divine soul array worked. Perhaps Shi Yun and the others thought that they had set up the divine soul array on Zhuge Xiaosheng, but Zhuge Xiaosheng had successfully resolved it. It should be Taoist Chu Byuku who made a mistake. The sect master will not be controlled by the divine soul array. Mu Yu looked at Zhuge Xiaosheng, who could barely open his eyes, and planned to ask him after he got better. Everyone, hurry up and recover. This area has been sealed by Tu Yumeng. No one may come here in a short time. Maybe there are still Tu Yumeng around. Everyone, be careful. Mu Yu said. When the others heard Mu Yu's words, they did not refute anything and hurriedly began to adjust their breathing to recover. Mu Yu adjusted his breathing for a moment, and the missing spiritual energy in his body finally recovered a little. Little Shuai did not appear. Just in case, Mu Yu did not plan to tell them his true identity. However, at that moment, two powerful auras of the crossing calamity stage exploded in the distance. Mu Yu was very familiar with one of them. It was Jin Shiyun's soul power. The other one was extremely swift and overbearing. It was Ing Sha Dongji. Mu Yu took 2 deep breaths and stood up. He was going to help shadow Killer Winter Solstice. He had to ensure that Jin Shiyun was killed. My lord, where are you going? Taoist Yuanda asked hurriedly when he saw Mu Yu leave. You guys wait here and take care of each other. Mu Yu said solemnly. His figure turned into a shadow and chased in the direction of the 2 auras in the distance. Taoist Yuanda and the others looked at Mu Yu in bewilderment. Other than the joy of surviving a disaster, they were very shocked by the sudden appearance of this great ascension stage expert. The power of that heavy sword seemed to be able to shatter the universe. Even Tu Yumeng, the Yumon's most outstanding strength and defense, could not withstand it. When did the human race have such a powerful expert? Not far from Pill City, there was a very small city called Gambling City. This was the world of gamblers. Rich cultivators liked to gamble here. Gambling City was managed by the evil sex Du Baiying. He did a lot of business, and there were a lot of gambling techniques on the Supreme Immortal list every day. Daoist Chu Buku swaggered into a Supreme Immortal gambling house, walking with a swagger like a bald old man with a lot of money in his pocket. Master, what are we betting this time? Chu Xiaoqi excitedly tossed the 3 spirit stones in his hand. His expression was as if he was carrying 3 million spirit stones. Chu Xiaoqing angrily followed behind the 2 of them. Her face was full of displeasure. Let me think. Same old. Daoist Chu Buku walked into the Supreme Immortal Gambling House with his head held high. The gambling house had all kinds of gambling methods. One of them was whether the top 20 Supreme Immortals on the Supreme Immortal list would change within a month. This method was very unpopular. Ever since the Supreme Immortal list was created, the top 20 Supreme Immortals had only changed once. At that time, a genius named Xiang Nan had made it to the 9th place. Until now, the 9th place had remained unchanged. At that time, it had caused a stir. But now, everyone knew Xiang Nan's identity and was used to it. After all, he was Jian Ying's disciple. Now more than 2 years had passed. The Supreme Immortal list had fluctuated, but the top 20 had never changed. It was very strange. This time we're betting big. I'll bet everything I have. Daoist Chu Buku waved his hand heroically. Slap! 9 spiritual stones rolled into the formation on the gambling table. He only had 9 spirit stones, and Chu Xiaoqing refused to give him any more than that no matter what. Master, you're still betting on this? 9 spiritual stones are all on it. What a waste. Chu Xiaoqi said with some regret as he tossed 3 spiritual stones in his hand. Then why don't you lend me another one to make 10 spiritual stones? Daoist Chu Buka chuckled. Chu Xiaoqi hurriedly grabbed his 3 spiritual stones tightly and shook his head. No, this time I'm going to bet my 3 spiritual stones on 3 different bets. Only by casting the net more can I catch the fish. Useless. If you don't have the determination to stake everything on a single bet, how can you make so much money from gambling? Look, this kind of unpopular gambling method has a very high payout. If the top 20 Supreme Immortals change within a month, we'll be able to turn 9 spiritual stones into 9,000 spiritual stones. Give me one to make 10 spiritual stones, and I'll give you a bonus next time, Daoist Chu Buku said. Without another word, Chu Xiaoqi turned and ran, afraid that his master would snatch the 3 spirit stones from his hands. Chu Xiaoqing snorted, and a fangirl expression appeared in her eyes again. Master, do you think Big Brother Muyu will be fine? Daoist Chu Buku's eyes widened. When did Muyu become your big brother? Just now. I secretly asked him in my heart if he could be my big brother, and then he nodded in my heart, Chu Xiaoqing said shyly. Daoist Chu Buku said with a pained expression, You unlucky girl, when will you change your bad habit of drooling at the sight of handsome men? It's a pity that you didn't see me when I was young. Otherwise, you'd definitely be addicted to my handsome face. Daoist Chu Buku touched the bald part of his head as he spoke. Forget it. By the way, Master, do you think Big Brother Muyu will understand the hint you left for him? Chu Xiaoqing asked. Nonsense, I've already said it so clearly. How could he not understand? Chu Buku snorted. What did you say to him? Be careful of Zhuge Xiaosheng. He's a stumbling block. How could he not understand such a straightforward hint? Chu Buku said. Chu Xiaoqing blinked her eyes. Be careful of Zhuge Xiaosheng. He's a stumbling block? Master, there's a lot of ambiguity in your words. How is it ambiguous? To put it bluntly, isn't it? Be careful of Zhuge Xiaosheng's safety. He's a stumbling block of the threefold palace. Why did you give him such a vague hint? Your words sound like you're telling Big Brother Muyu to be careful of Zhuge Xiaosheng, and that Zhuge Xiaosheng is a bad person. Chu Xiaoqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There are too many words, and it's troublesome. I'll save as much as I can. Daoist Chu Buku said indifferently. Chu Xiaoqing thought for a moment, and then exclaimed, Master, wait. I remember something. You just said that the threefold palace has controlled many famous people. Does that mean that person has also been cast on the divine soul formation? Yes. That's why I told Muyu to be careful of Zhuge Xiaoxing's safety. Then why don't you just tell Big Brother Muyu? What Big Brother Muyu? Why are you calling him so affectionately? Jin Xian broke free from the void. She saw that Tu Yuming's aura had disappeared in the distance, and knew that Muyu must have repelled Tu Yumin. She was extremely angry, but suddenly she seemed to sense something, and then smiled. The distance of the divine soul formation can finally be controlled. You should make your move. Jin Xian seemed to be talking to herself, and then looked behind her. She had used a soul technique to temporarily lure Shadow Killer Winter Solstice away, but she knew that this soul technique couldn't last long. Shadow Killer Winter Solstice would soon catch up. How dare you attack me? Shadow Killer Winter Solstice, just you wait. Jin Xian tore open the void and disappeared again. The ground was a mess. The huge crack still hadn't closed. Tree branches and gravel were scattered everywhere. The three tall mountains were also cut off. The cut was very smooth, as if it had been cut off by a huge sword that reached the heavens. In the battle just now, Tu Yuming's appearance was too sudden, and they were caught off guard. If Muyu hadn't arrived in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Zhuge Xiaosheng was severely injured. Facing Tu Yuming's siege, he was the strongest and was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. At this moment, his aura was weak, and his face was extremely pale. Sect leader Zhuge, can you still use spiritual energy? Taoist Yuanda came to Zhuge Xiaosheng's side. Compared to Zhuge Xiaosheng, his injuries were lighter. Most of the time, Zhuge Xiaosheng was blocking the attacks. Yao Wuji, Lu Xianshi, and the rest were only lightly injured. Only Zhuge Xiaosheng's injuries weren't optimistic. This time, my injuries are very serious. I didn't expect to meet Tu Yuming's priest on this trip. This kind of battle power is really not something we can contend against. Zhuge Xiaosheng took the healing pills that Yao Wuji gave him. He had already recovered a lot, and his complexion had also recovered a little. An ordinary Yaman might not be afraid. With Zhuge Xiaosheng's strength, he could defeat most heaven-ranked Yaman. However, in the face of Tu Yuming's powerful battle power and murderous intent, he was powerless. If it wasn't for that Lord saving us, I'm afraid we would have been in deep trouble. Yao Wuji said with regret. The others also nodded. However, another doubt appeared in everyone's mind. The murderous aura on Tu Yuming's body was very terrifying, causing people to tremble in fear. However, the mysterious expert who repelled Tu Yuming's murderous aura was exactly the same as Tu Yuming's. What was going on? No matter what, it's a good thing to be able to keep your life. Lu Xianshi anxiously channeled his spiritual energy into Zhuge Xiaosheng's body to help Zhuge Xiaosheng recover his strength. Taoist Yuanda looked at Mu Yu's disappearing figure and said, Sect leader Zhuge, why do you think Tu Yuming's appearance is here? Taoist Yuanda just stood there and did nothing. He also didn't take out his pills to Zhuge Xiaosheng. Zhuge Xiaosheng was a wise person. When the cultivation world started to call for him to help repair the city's defensive array, he understood that behind the huge benefits, there was a huge danger. Yaman's appearance caused the status of array masters to rise. However, it also meant that as the strongest array master in the array sect, he would become a thorn in Yaman's side. The sudden honor did not go to his head. He had always been very cautious. He didn't expect to be attacked by Yaman today. Zhuge Xiaosheng looked at Mu Hao, who was standing at the side, and didn't know what to do. He then said, Yaman's appearance here must be to kill me. Taoist Yuan nodded. That's true. You were able to repair the city defense array, allowing every city to resist the attacks of the Yu Meng Devil Clan. This is not something they want to see. It's understandable that the Yu Meng Devil Clan wants to kill you. Zhuge Xiaosheng agreed with Taoist Yuanda's words. However, he felt that the way Taoist Yuanda spoke was a little strange. His tone didn't seem to be condemning Yaman. Instead, it seemed to be emphasizing something. After Yao Wuji checked Zhuge Xiaosheng's injuries, he found that there was something wrong with Zhuge Xiaosheng's heart. Martial uncle Sect leader Zhuge's heart is seriously injured. I remember that you have a rank 7 heart recovery pill. Take it out and heal him. No, I want to use that pill. Daoist Yuanda said faintly. Everyone was stunned. Martial uncle, what are you saying? Is this the time to joke? Grandmaster Yao was anxious. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that Zhuge Xiaosheng was a guest invited by the Pill Cauldron sect. At this moment, he was seriously injured on the way to the Pill Cauldron sect. As a rank 7 alchemist, Daoist Yuanda should take out his pill to heal Zhuge Xiaosheng. However, Daoist Yuanda refused to take out his pill. Daoist Yuanda's stinginess was strange. No, something is wrong. There must be a problem somewhere. Ever since Zhuge Xiaosheng met Daoist Yuanda, he felt that something was wrong. However, he couldn't tell what was wrong. However, Daoist Yuanda was a highly respected senior in the cultivation world. He shouldn't do anything out of line. Therefore, Zhuge Xiaosheng didn't think too much about it. However, at this time, Daoist Yuanda refused to take out his pill to save him. It really didn't make sense. It wasn't that Zhuge Xiaosheng coveted Daoist Yuanda's pill. He knew that Daoist Yuanda wasn't a stingy person. On the contrary, it was rumored that Daoist Yuanda was very magnanimous. He was highly respected in the cultivation world and was also the most respected senior in the Pill Cauldron sect. It was impossible for such a person to remain indifferent at this time. He didn't even think of using his crossing tribulation stage spiritual energy to personally heal Zhuge Xiaosheng. Zhuge Xiaosheng's heart was filled with doubts. Daoist Yuanda continued. Actually, Yaman isn't the only one who wants to kill you. There are others who want you to disappear from this world. Daoist Yuanda suddenly raised his head slowly. There was a white light in his eyes. This white light was very holy and made people feel reverence. Zhuge Xiaosheng was shocked. I'm one of them. Without any warning, Daoist Yuanda suddenly attacked. The powerful aura of a crossing tribulation stage instantly enveloped Zhuge Xiaosheng's body. Heavenly Qin trigram sealing Xingyu. Zhuge Xiaosheng had already felt that something was wrong when he saw the white light in Daoist Yuanda's eyes. Now that Daoist Yuanda suddenly attacked him, he quickly took precautions. The yin-yang 8 trigrams instantly blocked in front of him. The shield formed by the 8 trigrams array seal caused Daoist Yuanda's attack to stagnate. However, Daoist Yuanda's full force attack was something that the heavily injured Zhuge Xiaosheng couldn't block at all. Bang! The 8 trigrams array seal in front of Zhuge Xiaosheng had already shattered. Daoist Yuanda's walking stick fiercely stabbed into Zhuge Xiaosheng's body, piercing through Zhuge Xiaosheng's body. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.